Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the racials. So for Arcane Mage, basically the best racials for Alliance are going to be Dark Iron Dwarf. I'll go over why later. But Dark Iron Dwarf will be number one. And then we'll put Dwarf on the same tier as that. So you could play either one, both are good. And then after that, I'm going to go with Night Elf. And then after that, I will say Panda and Human are the two after Night Elf as well. Both kind of equally as good as each other. And then for Horde, we have probably the best race on Horde will also just be Panda. Second one, you could probably go with Orc. Then I would say Undead. And then from there on out is kind of, they're all, equally as good and bad. So now I'll go over my reasoning for a couple of these. So the reason why Dark Iron Dwarf in particular synergizes really, really well with Arcane is because of the racial. Let's see if I can maybe see it. Dark Iron Dwarf racial, it removes all debuffs on you. It removes all magic debuffs, all poisons, all bleeds. And the reason why this is really good for Mage is because a lot of comps that Mage might struggle into is like an Acer Rogue, a Feral Druid, a lot of stuff where it has damage that kind of kills you over time. Because Mage right now is really tanky in terms of, or Mage's tankiness comes from the fact that they can kite so well. And like they have a lot of mobility, they have blast wave, alter time, all those kind of things. But with bleeds on you, you can't really live as long, right? So that's why this racial is going to be the best. It's also really, really good paired with mass invisibility. So that's another reason you can Dark Iron all of your debuffs off yourself and then mass invis. You don't have to ask for a dispel from your healer or whatever. The reason why Dwarf is also the same is because it has the same exact racial pretty much, except you get Dammer Duck instead of Intellect. So it's basically like Dark Iron Dwarf is the more offensive one. Dwarf is the more defensive one, but both pretty much do the same thing. So Nelf is, in my opinion, the most fun, and I'm always going to play Nelf on Alliance because of Shadow Meld. Shadow Meld is extremely diverse. If you see a Chaos Bolt coming at you in the air or Storm Bolt coming at you in the air, anything with a projectile, an Axe Toss, any type of projectile that is coming at you, you can press Meld as soon as it's in the air, and it will count as if it doesn't hit you. So if a Warlock presses Mortal Coil on you and it's in the air and you press Meld, you can basically just meld the coil and it acts like it doesn't hit you. Another thing that's really good with Nelf is you can like meld Eat, you can meld Hunter Silence, that annoying spider sting. Man, Meld has so many different like usages in twos if you're playing Rogue Mage. If it's like a Priest Rogue or something that you basically want to wait for the eye, you can just invis into a meld. Man, there's just so many usages from meld. It's really, really, really good ability. Another one, Hunters. I know a lot of people struggle into Marksman Hunters. They press their double tap rapid fire. You just meld it, and they basically cannot kill you. Like it's really hard to die to a Marksman Hunter as an Arcane Mage because you have mass invis on a 1 minute cooldown. So you can basically just mass invis, double tap if it's on your teammates, or if that's on cooldown, then you can use Nelf. So I'm not going to really go over the other two racials. Panda I'll discuss on Horde. Human is basically like you have two trinkets on a 90-second cooldown because you have Medallion that will get you out of anything, and then you have Human that'll get you out of stuns. However, you play Blink Stun a lot as Arcane, so I don't really think it's that valuable. You can play Human if you are like an avid Shimmer user. We'll get into that later. Okay, and then we'll go over the Horde ones. The reason why I would play Panda is because it's kind of just, the best racial on Horde. The only other racial that kind of competes with it is Orc because of the, damage increase that you can get from the Blood Fury. But in my opinion, not that great. I mean, you have better options on Alliance. But like I said, if you are playing Horde, I would go with Panda first and foremost because it does give you that extra little bit of CC that's instant. It's basically another Dragon's Breath. However, it is actually on Sheep DR, not DB DR. So you can think of it like a DB, but on Sheep DR. So that's just a really cool racial. I think it's a pretty high skill ceiling racial in terms of trying to find value out of it. If you want something that's a little bit more passive, something that's just going to be like there all the time, you're still going to have the 20% stun reduction on Orc. So that's going to be pretty good. And then you also have the damage increase too that you can macro into your Touch of the Magi, Combustion, Icy Veins, whatever spec you're playing. So that's going to cover the racials. And now we will get into the stat priority, enchants, and gear. Okay, so now we are going to go over stats, stat prio, enchants, and gear. Basically, how you can set up your character to make sure that you're doing the most. One thing I do want to reiterate here, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't care about your gear. However, I do want to just mention that I do have like an alt mage who basically has no gear, and I'm at almost the same ratings as my main. So I just want to say, like, even though gearing is important to be not super duper behind if you're trying to be competitive, because obviously playing with no gear or less gear is a disadvantage. However, it's not the it's not gonna make or break every single scenario. So just wanted to throw that in there. So basically, the way we're gearing is we're always doing haste verse. We're never doing mastery. We're never doing crit. The reason for this is that haste is really good for a couple reasons. As Arcane and as most mage specs, you have to cast, actually mainly as Arcane, you have to cast a lot of your damage. A lot of your damage comes from casting Ring of Fires, casting Arcane Surges, channeling your missiles, casting Arcane Blasts, casting your Radiant Spark, getting CC with DB, Ring of Frost, and Sheep. There's just a lot of casts that you have to do, so haste is going to really help get those casts off. Another thing is haste, and a lot of people don't know this, but haste actually lowers your global cooldown, your GCD. So if you didn't know this, like, most classes don't have a locked GCD. Most of them, it's affected by their haste. I think Rogue, or maybe just Sub Rogue, I think it's Rogue in general though, is the only class that has a locked 1 second global cooldown, so they don't need to like play haste to get lower globals. However, as mage, the more haste you have, the faster your globals recover. So you can see here, that's your global cooldown. Every time you use an ability, it will put all of your abilities on the GCD. It makes that faster, so it's refreshing faster, and you're able to get more abilities out. That's why I think haste verse is always the best, no matter what. I know a lot of people have been seeing like the crazy builds coming out from like Mitch or whatever, where you stack crit and mastery, and it's like you're like, oh man, he's doing a lot of damage. But this is it's not going to work at high ratings because it's like an all-in strategy. With haste verse, you're able to kind of move the game a little bit more consistently. Working through cooldowns, and it just makes your character a lot more playable. If you have low haste and verse, basically without verse, you're going to be a lot squishier and you're going to do a lot less damage. And then without haste, your globals are going to feel like molasses, and you're not really going to be able to do too much outside of the opener. With your like big mass and viz surge, it's going to be really hard to win the game if you don't instantly one-shot someone, which good players will. You might kill them one time with the one shot, but then they're going to check the details, damage breakdown, watch the game back, learn how they died, and then they'll never die from it again. So sorry for rambling on that, but so now we can get into my gearing. So basically, we're not full gear yet. However, basically the way gearing works is you want haste first on all of your pieces. So you can see here, these will eventually be conquest pieces. So the conquest pieces I will be going with is the weapon, the cape, shoulders, neck, gloves, and then the 2 rings, and then the 2 trinkets. As you can see in all the other slots, like these, for example, the boots for the Drake Breaker boots, the way you get these is the war mode quartermaster has these for sale. The where are they at here? These boots, haste verse. And the reason you want these is because in the conquest vendor there are no haste verse boots. The only ones you can get, I believe, are crit verse or mastery verse, which you don't want. So even at full conquest, the boots here, you can see verse mastery and crit verse. And then even though, for example, this one says increases item level to 424, these ones say 421. So even though it's like a 3 item level decrease, it's still going to be worth in the long run. So these, I think you'll lock in always. And then these pants are pretty decent. Haste first, I got them from the crafted area. I can show you guys what that is later on. And then we're going with the belt. So the reason why we're going with this belt is because of the extra 5% CC reduction. Even though it is verse mastery, which does kind of suck, it's not really that big of a deal because it's verse heavy, so you're still getting a lot of verse, and you're only losing around 150% or 150 haste. So it's not really that big of a deal. And for 5% additional CC, just a lot of value in that. And we also get that from the crafted bench. Like I said, I'll show you that in a sec. You want the double haste first rings. We'll go over the enchants and the gems later. The badge trinket, I would recommend having all three because all three have different use cases. So we're gonna have all three of those. Obviously the medallion, the weapon, and then these, I did actually get this with my second set of trophies from this guy who gives you the quest to give you the trophies of strife, which then you'll take the war mode gear that you get from this guy, go here, and then you'd be able to upgrade it. As you can see, you can take the gear from this guy, apply some trophies of strife to it, and then it will give you the conquest version of it. I actually don't know if we will keep the bracers long term. Let me see. Wrist. So it looks like we actually probably will keep the bracers long term because you're not really losing much and you're getting that extra haste. This is going to be a season where we're really starved on haste. We're not going to have a lot. Right now in PvP, it says I have 31, but this won't be the case whenever you're full conquest gear. So we're definitely going to want to stack as much haste as possible this season. And now I want to kind of get into the tier set, because this tier set has kind of caused some people to be a little bit confused on how do you even obtain it. Is it good for each spec? Is it good at all, like 2 set or 4 set? And then before I want to talk about that, I want to talk about the Drake Breaker tier set. This tier set is actually disabled in PvP. So this versatility that it says increased by 1 of 5, you don't get that. And then it's not worth going for the 4 set because obviously you don't get that either. So just want to throw that in there. So now I'll talk about the tier set. As you can see here, let me actually turn this off, this guide thing, or we'll just move it up here actually. So as you can see, haste verse on the head, and then verse mastery with verse heavy on the chest. So this is the 2 set. You get this from the Great Vault. You get lucky each week, and you get your Great Vault reward. This is where I've gotten both of my pieces so far. On my alt mage, I have gotten 0 pieces. So yes, even though I've gotten lucky and gotten the 2 bis on my main, my alt has been very unlucky. Later on, I think 4 weeks or 3 weeks from now, the creation catalyst will come out, and then that will give us the ability to transform our conquest gear over here into tier gear. So don't worry if you're not getting lucky now. We will be able to get this on demand soon. Another way you can get this gear is through the raid, the Vault of the Incarnates or something. This is just if you want to get like a head start, although the gear that you get from it, if it's like normal or heroic, will be lower item level. So I wouldn't recommend doing that for like the 4 set. If it was just like a matter of you got 1 from the vault, from the Great Vault, and then you wanted to like just get 1 more piece to get the 2 set, that I think would be fine to use like the normal or heroic pieces. But yeah. So I just want to go over the tier set here. For each arcane charge, arcane blast critical strike is increased by 5%, and arcane explosion critical strike is increased by 3. So we don't really care about the second part. The really good part about this is basically it's 20% increased arcane blast. So whenever you're bursting and you have full arcane stacks here, your arcane blast has a 20% increased crit rate. And you can see the damage difference there, 40k non-crit, 70k crit. So obviously us critting our arcane blast is a huge deal, and this is going to guarantee that you get a lot more critical strikes. And as you can see here, we're not losing too many stats because the helm is haste verse, haste heavy. So this is actually really good, like bis, better than the conquest one. And then this one, it's obviously not haste verse, but like I said, it's verse heavy, so you're not losing too much damage in survivability. You're only losing a little bit of haste, which obviously does suck, but the 2 set is really good, so you definitely want it. And now we will go over the enchants. So for the head, there is none. For the neck, here, let me go to the auction house. So if I go to item enhancements, neck, you will see the tiered medallion settings. So for here, I'm pretty sure the way you want to do this is you want to buy 2 of the tier 2 ones and then a tier 3 one and then apply them in that order. So you would buy 2 of these, boom, and then you would apply them, and then you would buy this one and then you would apply it. So that will give you the 3 sockets on your neck. I will go over the gems too. So to get the gems, you will go to gems, and then the ones you want are energized Yesemerald. So you type in energized Yesem, something like that, and then you would buy the 3 tier ones. That'll give you the haste heavy, haste first ones. I think you want these ones over these single stats. If you see here, like you would see, some of them have like 88 haste. However, this is less overall stats because it's 88 versus 103 total stats. So I do think even though the other one is like 13%, or sorry, 13 less haste, it's still better. Like more value overall. And then the primary stat gem is from the work order bench, which I'll go over later. I do believe there is actually a cape enchant. This is a new cape. So let me buy that one real quick. And the best one for this is going to be this one here, Homebound Speed. So we'll just go ahead and buy that. And then for chest, you're going to want either one of 2. For Arcane, what I would recommend is Reserve of Intellect. However, you want the third one. Where is it? There it is. The 3 tier one, Reserve of Intellect. So this is going to increase your intellect by 111 and increase your mana pool by 5%. And the reason you want this is because this is going to help your Arcane Surge do more damage, because Arcane Surge depletes your mana and deals damage based off of mana spent. So this is actually going to help your Arcane Surge hit a little bit harder. So I would run this one as Arcane. And then if you're using the Waking Stats one, it's probably fine too. It's just like a little bit extra main stat. I use this for the other specs, so I have both. But yeah. And then let's continue. The wrist, there's going to be one that gives you 200 speed. It is called, so you go wrist here. It's called Devotion of Speed. That one's pretty easy. For gloves, there aren't any. For belt, there aren't any. And then for legs, you actually have a pretty big enchant. So we'll go to legs. So the Temporal Spell Thread, you're doing the same thing. So you get the 177 intellect and you get the 5% mana. So with these 2 enchants, your Arcane Surge is going to be hitting 10% harder, which is really, really dope. Yeah, you definitely want that one. And then we'll go on to the boots. Let's see. Feet. You are going to want the 250 speed. Speed is really, really nice in Arena. You can basically just, increase your movement speed. As Arcane, you already have a lot of movement speed modifiers with Chrono Shift. So this is just going to ensure that you're moving faster baseline and even faster when you have your Chrono Shift up. Because, mobility as Arcane is kind of your #1 thing. It's like the biggest thing that sets you apart from the other 2 specs. So this is just going to further act on that. Now we'll go down to the rings. Item enhancements, finger, boom. We're going to want the Devotion of Haste. This is going to give you the 82 haste. And then, yeah, that's all you want for those. And then obviously for the socket, the green ring. This is why I'm running the green ring. Once I get the Conquest ring, which I'll probably do like near the end of, probably be like one of the last pieces I replace, is because having this ring is actually more haste. So you can buy this ring if you just go into the auction house and you go to Crimson Combatant, and then okay, we can sort by miscellaneous finger, and then you can find the stats here. You'll find haste first on here, and then you can see it comes with a socket, so you just find haste first on here, buy that. I'm using that until the end of Conquest, so if you're watching this later down the line, and we have full Conquest by then, I would normally run Conquest and then the Honor one, which won't have a socket. And then that's really it for the enchants. We do have Sophic Devotion, I guess, for the weapon. We'll go to Item Enhancements, Weapon, Sophic Devotion. Now, I know these are really, really expensive right now. If you're watching this guide, like as soon as it comes out, this will eventually go down. We are still really early in the expansion. This is always what happens at the start of an expansion. If you don't have the gold for this, you can get the Sophic Writ, which is basically just 200 main stat less for a lot cheaper. So you can use this one on either your honor weapon or on your conquest weapon if you don't have the gold for it. It's only going to be a slight decrease in intellect. But yeah, this will eventually go down, so don't worry. But yeah, that should do it for the stat prio, enchants, and gear. So now I want to start getting into our talent builds, PvP talents, and when you should change them based off of what comp you're playing, based off of if you're playing solo shuffle, 2s, 3s, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, let's get right into that. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a big topic. So the talent builds and the PvP talents. There's a lot to go over here, so basically let's just get started. On the left side, we are running, this is kind of what I run in, like what I would say is like the general build. I run this in solo shuffle anytime I have a healer, so like 3s, solo shuffle. There's not really too much I would change here based off of what comp I was playing, so I usually play this into like most things in solo shuffle. This obviously you can change this based off of what you're fighting and the playstyle that you are trying to play around, or you can just change this based off personal preference. We can talk more about these talents a little bit later. Just wanted to say, like, that's kind of like what I'm changing over here. The reason for a couple of these talents, so I know a lot of people ask about the bottom. The bottom it has a ton of really good talents. However, I really like shifting power, and I really like time anomaly on Arcane. Time anomaly gives you a lot of value with the time warp procs and the clear castings. The arcane surges are nice too, but they're kind of a little bit awkward to get sometimes because a lot of the times you're kiting with barrage, so you might not have 4 arcane charges all that often. And then you might get a surge proc, which you can't really do anything with that point because you just have no arcane charges because you're kiting with barrage and stuff. So the surge procs are maybe the least valuable here, but you do get a lot of clear castings from this talent, and the time warp procs are just really, really, really juice for getting that fat haste. Something else over here, these two talents, the mass slow and shimmer, or sorry, not mass slow and shimmer, mass slow and antonitis are two that you can kind of change based off of, let's say, for example, you want heal block. Let's say you don't feel comfortable playing without heal block, even though I don't recommend heal block with situations where you have a healer, and I'll explain that why in a sec. But if you did want to get heal block, what you would do is you would take these two talents out. You would take Imp Nova out and put it into Ronin, remove Frost Nova, 2 in Cryo, and then you'd be able to fill out the rest of the tree. The reason why this works is because instead of running Imp Nova and Antonitis to unlock the downside here, I really like these two talents, and this is why I don't recommend running Cryo all the time. The increased haste is really nice, obviously, and then the Imp Nova is also really nice because if you guys didn't know, Nova without that talent is actually only 6 seconds long. I'll show you here. You can see the Nova, if you read the bottom right tooltip, it's only 6 seconds. And keep in mind, this is 6 seconds into the 2-set bonus here from the trinkets, which duration of incoming crowd control effects reduced by 15%. So it's 15% of 6 seconds, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, but ultimately your Nova is going to be really, really short, even if it's max DR. Even on no DR, Nova is going to be pretty short. And you have 2 Novas from Ice Nova, so I think this talent is really, really good for kiting melees, keeping pets into a Nova. A lot of people argue, well, people are going to use stuff to get out of the Nova anyways. That's not always the case. So I really like this talent. That's kind of why I don't recommend running Cryo Freeze at all times, because whenever you do want to run Cryo Freeze, you would have to take out these 2 talents. You would put them into... you would put the 1 into Tome of Ronin, and then you would fill out the rest of the tree here at the bottom. And this is what the tree is going to look like if you do want to play heal block. Basically, yeah, you're just losing Antonitis and you're losing Imp Frost Nova, and then you would put it into Ronin so that you could still unlock the Flow of Time path and the Frigid Winds path to further go down the tree. So yeah, that's basically what I would do in threes and in solo shuffle. Any type of threes environment, this is usually what I'm rocking. And then obviously we can talk about shimmer and ice flows. So this is kind of like a big topic that I get a lot of questions about. Honestly, what it comes down to is personal preference. I'm just going to be the one to say it. It's personal preference at this point. Shimmer is really good offensively because, it allows you to, let's say, there are two scenarios, kind of. It lets you cast while moving. So let's say I'm casting a polymorph. A DPS is training me. We'll just say this is a polymorph because I can't shoot these targets, but I'm polying. DPS is on me. I can blink mid-cast, which obviously will prevent them from stopping that cast. So that is really, really good. Another thing is it allows you to blink in DB on one global. So normally if you were blink stun, you would blink, you're on global cooldown, wait for that, and then you could DB. But the issue is during that blink timing that you're waiting for your global, enemies have the ability to press Shadow Word Death, press Holy Ward, press Port, stun you, incap you, knock you back. Like there's a lot of counterplay. Whereas with Shimmer, since it's off GCD, you can blink DB, same global. So there's basically no counterplay to that, which is really, really dope. So Shimmer is really, really good pick offensively. However, it is a lot worse defensively because it has a long cooldown. It's a 25-second cooldown. It's only 23 because it's reduced by flow of time right now. But so it has 2 charges, long cooldown. You also can't blink out of stuns with it like you can when you spec into ice flows. It gives you normal blink, and then you would be able to blink out of stuns, which makes you a lot harder to lock down. With Shimmer, basically you have Trinket Altar as one set of pairings to kind of save yourself, and then you have Block to save yourself. So you're kind of like pretty susceptible to dying with Shimmer. However, like I said, it's a lot better offensively. And then you have normal blink here, which also grants you ice flows, and ice flows lets you cast while moving. So that actually helps blink stun a lot more. Back in Shadowlands, we had just normal blink stun, and you would play it pretty much all the time, but you didn't even have ice flows, so you had to just sit there and cast. So ice flows makes playing blink stun a lot more bearable, in my opinion. However, Shimmer is still more fun, better offensively. However, I really do actually like blink stun with ice flows for Arcane in particular, because you have a lot to cast. So it's really nice to be able to do it while moving, and blink stun ensures, since you're such a highly mobile spec, and it basically ensures that you have an even harder time getting locked down, because if someone catches up to you and stuns you, you can just blink out and then you're immediately moving again. If they snare you too, you use the barrier from energized barriers to remove the snare on you, which is something that we will talk about later down the road with positioning and defensive play. And then while you're moving at that speed, you're able to cast while moving. It's a really, really good talent. It makes playing blink stun way more bearable, in my opinion. Basically, the situations I personally would change these in, because like I said, it is personal. I really like ice flows into pretty much 85% of my matchups as Arcane. I would play Shimmer into Mistweavers and Healing Priests if their DPS were not DPS that could punish me super hard for doing so. So basically, what I mean by that is if, let's say, I'm fighting a Mistweaver, and they're playing with 2 DPS who have long cooldown stuns, like a Shadow Priest and a Ret, or like a Shadow Priest and a Windwalker. Those classes have long cooldown stuns, so it's going to be a lot harder to get locked down in a stun, even if you are playing Shimmer, because your trinkets will rotate up. It's going to be harder to die kind of often, whereas like a DH or a rogue of any sort has a stun on like a 20-second cooldown. It's a really short cooldown, so you're going to want ice flows to make sure that you can't just be stunned off cooldown. That's kind of the idea behind it. The reason I like Shimmer into Mistweavers and Disc Priests or Holy Priests in particular is because Disc Priests or Holy Priests can be hard to CC because they have Holy Ward and Death. So when you blink on top of them, they have a global to react by either fearing you off them, deathing. So Shimmer helps eliminate that global disadvantage. You can just, Shimmer Sheep where you can start casting the sheep and shimmer into their line, late. And then same thing with Mistweavers. Mistweavers are extremely hard to catch as blink stun, because if you blink on top of them, they'll parry you. If you blink on top of them, they will port. They just have a lot of ways they can stop it, and Shimmer is going to help you be able to kind of start the cast here. They're going to roll out of your line, and then you can Shimmer mid-cast and catch them, because they are pretty slippery classes to CC. However, if they were playing with, like, if it was like Holy Priest sub-rogue for something in 2s, I would not play Shimmer. You would have to try to land CC in different ways of doing that, but... So that's basically going to cover the general tree. The thing I would change on the general tree, if I was playing Rogue Mage in 2s, is this. This is what I would go with. So that is the left tree that I would play for, like, pretty much most scenarios. However, in Rogue Mage in 2s, this is what I would do. I would play this set of talents here with 2 times Cryo Freeze, because you won't have a healer. You want time manipulation, because you want to be able to reduce the cooldown on DB and Ring of Frost. And then you also have Freezing Cold and Displacement, which aren't super needed tools for Arcane because of how mobile you already are. However, you can pick those up because they are nice. Displacement is kind of nice when you're playing Blinkstone. And there was something I actually do want to mention about Master of Time 2 with Shimmer that I kind of forgot, or just in general, and that is that it does give you a refunded charge whenever you alter back. So let's say you alter Shimmer. Whenever you alter back, you'll see I press it here, it'll grant me another charge of Shimmer or Blink. This works with Blink as well. So that's just something I wanted to throw in there. That does make Shimmer feel a little bit better in some scenarios. Back to the Rogue Mage 2s build. As you can see here, I still got my Imp Nova, my Shifting Power, Freezing Cold, Time Manipulation, Displacement. These are going to be pretty useful tools when playing Rogue Mage 2s, because Displacement, the name of the game is taking as little damage as possible. Let's say, you have to push on. I'm on this pillar over here. I blink, DB, ring, we do our go, boom. Damaging. Guy trades his trinket. He's running at me. I can displace back to the pillar here and immediately be fine and still have all my buttons. Basically, displacement is just really nice for engaging and then being able to get out right away. Keep in mind the buff does only last 8 seconds. And it does leave this nice little purple dot here that you can see. Freezing Cold is really nice for a lot of reasons as well. For one, where you're using... 2 Ice Novas, or 2 Frost Novas, sorry. So whenever these end, it's going to leave a nice debuff, you can see here, that slows them over time. So it starts at 90% since we're using Frigid Winds, and it goes over time. This also works with Ice Nova, synergizes really well with this as well. That just makes your class extra annoying to play against, even though you already have spammable 60% slow, Chrono Shift, which gives you 50% movement speed, and now you also just have really annoying roots. So it makes you even harder to catch playing these talents. And as Rogue Mage in 2s, when you don't have a healer, you need to be as annoying to connect to as possible. And then this Time Manipulation talent, as you can see here, like if you're doing your burst, you DB ring, you're using your cooldowns here, surge. Every time you press a clear casting missiles, it resets your cooldown on Dragon's Breath and Ring of Frost. And it also, note, this does work on both of your Novas as well. So that's something, if you guys didn't know that, Time Manipulation does reduce the cooldown of your Novas. So that is really dope. So that's enough about the general tree. Now we will talk more about the Arcane tree here. So a couple things to note here. I do run this set of 3 baseline, pretty much Supernova, Impetus, and improved clear castings. The things you could change over here is into like Shadow Play or something that has a lot of magic damage, like Demo Warlock, or not Demo Warlock, Affliction Warlock, Shadow Priest, stuff like this. You could drop this and improved clear casting, and then go down here and play this instead. This is a highly more defensive build, and I kind of don't like running it sometimes, but if you were really getting owned into like S play or something with a lot of CC and magic damage, this is really good because the duration of harmful magic effects is also reduced by 10%, which is really, really strong. If you can use barrier, let's say you don't have supernova or counterspell and you're getting cycloned by something, the only thing you have is barrier. You can barrier, and it's basically going to reduce it by 25%. It's going to basically be like a half clone. It's really, really strong. However, this is a lot more damage for a couple of reasons. I also really like this when I'm playing with Rogue Mage and 2s. So clear casting can stack an additional 2 times. This is really good synergy with time manipulation, and it basically saves you a talent down here because empowerment, you have a lot of really, really good PvP talents. So being able to have this as a talent is really, really dope considering Arcane Empowerment. It does only increase the damage by 5% per stack, and a lot of the times you're not holding onto your stacks too much, so it's kind of a dead talent. I mean, it's good sometimes, but Ring of Fire is kind of just better, and I say that these two talents kind of hold the same tier, like Empowerment or Ring of Fire most of the time, and I pretty much always pick Ring of Fire. So and then Impetus kind of has a low proc rate, but you need to take it to get to Supernova, and Supernova's a really good ability. You should think of Supernova like another counter spell. So it's basically only used as like an interrupt. You can also use it on mobility options such as Charge, Feral Leap, Leap of Faith from Priest, the Grip, Heroic Leap. You can use it on a mobility options to actually stop the mobility option mid-roll. So that's just another tip for that. But like I said, I'm mainly using this to interrupt casts. If I kick a Warlock on Nether Portal and they start casting Tyrant, I have 2 ways to interrupt that. So yeah, not really too much I'm changing over here ever. Like I said, I'm running this kind of baseline. If I was dying really hard, I would go into here like I said. But yeah, that's really it. Now we can start to talk about PvP talents. So Ring of Fire, Mass Invis, and then Precog. This is what I'm locking in a lot. If there's not a lot of interrupts, what I will do is I will lock in either Kleptomania, let's say where I'm fighting a Resto Druid. If I'm playing Asa Arcane or something like that, or I'm playing Rogue Mage 2s and I'm fighting a Resto Druid, having Kleptomania is really, really nice. However, I wouldn't take it always, because having the ability to spam spell steal is really, really nice. So another option you could go with is Netherwind. Netherwind is kind of slept on talent. It reduces the chance you'll suffer a critical strike by 10%. Basically what this means is it's not 10% of people's crit, it's actually just a flat 10%. So because I only have 6% crit, if I was attacking a mage who is wearing this talent, I would never crit them unless I had some sort of thing that increased my crit. So it's really strong against classes who have low crit, people who aren't stacking crit, which is a lot of people in PvP. However, a lot of people do have crit modifiers. So like a monk has Keepers, which, ups their crit chance. This wouldn't reduce crits into that. It would just reduce it by 10%. So it's not like you won't ever be crit, but you are going to be a lot more tanky with this talent. So I do recommend running this into some situations where precog is not great. For example, if you're fighting Disc Priest, Resto Druid, Shadow Priest, Affliction Warlock, something like that, the only kick on the whole team is Affliction Warlock. So you don't really need precog because there's only one kick. However, if you're fighting Demon Hunter, DK, Resto Shaman, they have 3 interrupts on their team, and also a lot of micro CC. So let's say even if you juked every single interrupt without precog, they would still have the Fell Eruption, the Pet Stun, the Pet Kick, there's so many different, you would get gripped on it. There are so many different things that can happen. So precog is going to give you that nice little window to be able to actually play the game. We'll talk about precog more later whenever we're talking about getting trained. But for now, just know that these talents are really good. I never change Ring of Fire. I don't ever really change Mass Invis either. These are 2 really good talents. I will talk about the other ones. So let's just go ahead. Ice Wall. Ice Wall is really niche. You can play it if you're comfortable with it. I don't ever really play it on Arcane because, like I said, you have so many good PvP talents that I'm not really sure you could ever really afford it. Arcanosphere got gutted. I don't know. It's just a meme. It's a mean talent. Like, you can run it if you're trying to do some Mitch Jones type shit, but I would never run it in a serious environment. Prismatic Cloak, I don't really like this talent either. 50% less magical damage for 2 seconds. It's just low value. Like, for one, if you're... It's just a low value talent, you know? Like, it's just a low value talent. Especially because you have so many other ones that are much more worth taking. Klepto, we kind of already talked about this. Temporal Shield, a lot of people do like temp. Like, I see people running temp, but the issue with Temporal Shield is that it is affected by dampening. So in like a solo shuffle environment where dampening is stacking really high, it says 100% of all damage taken while shielded. However, this is going to be heavily affected by dampening. So most of the time, it's only going to heal you for like 50 to 70, like depending on when the game is. It's really not going to heal you that much. In my opinion, you would have a much better time, and you would be way tankier playing Netherwind over Temporal in like almost all situations, except for maybe if you were fighting something that was more dot oriented. But man, even then, I swear Netherwind would still reduce more damage overall in the long term. Like, you would take less damage throughout the entire game playing Netherwind. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion on Temporal. And then obviously Arcane Empowerment, you could also play this. And then you could maybe take this talent. Like, for example, this is actually something, if I was fighting something where I didn't want Klepto, so let's say I'm fighting a Priest Healer, right? Priest Healer, don't want Klepto. And I was also fighting 2 DPS that didn't really have kicks or too much micro. Like, you wouldn't want Klepto and you wouldn't want Precog, so what would be that other talent? And let's say they also weren't going you could actually just opt to run this really offensive build, and then you could just take this one talent and you could put it wherever you want. I mean, it really doesn't matter. You could run Arcane Familiar for the extra 10% damage on your Arcane Surge. You could run... That's probably what I would do, to be honest, is I would put it into that talent. But yeah, that's kind of... I never really do that too much, but yeah. Hope that kind of helped, point you guys in the right direction on what we're doing for talents. Yeah, you have, like I said, a lot of PvP talents as Arcane. You're never really changing too much up here, and you're never really changing too much over here, except, like I said, this is my RM2's build. If I wanted to run, solo shuffle, what I would do, just to reiterate, is I would do something like this. Take these two, boom, boom. So yeah, that's kind of all I really have to say about the talents. If you guys do have any questions further about that, I do have a section in my Discord that kind of shows you my talent builds. I'm constantly updating it. Like, if in a couple months this guy gets, maybe something changes, definitely make sure to hit that up, and you can see my current talent builds pretty much always. So, and the reasonings behind some changes that I would make. But anyways, let's get into our burst rotation. So yeah, let's do that. So there were some things I wanted to add to the talents. I do get a lot of questions as to why we're not taking diverted energy, like reabsorption, tempest, all these like defensive talents. And the reason being is that they are nerfed in PvP. Diverted is actually nerfed by 50% in PvP. So even though it reads heals you for 10%, in PvP, this would be heals you for 5%, and then you would put 2 points into it, and then it would be 10%. This isn't really that great. It's actually really awful. Every time I've tried it, it heals me for about 2% of my overall healing. So it's like, in my opinion, just a really awful talent. If it did get unnerfed in PvP, it could be potentially good because it would heal you for 20%. Not sure how good it would be, but like I said, maybe it wouldn't be awful. And then this is even worse. This is nerfed in PvP as well. So in PvP, this would read gain a shield that absorbs 1% of your maximum health. Also really awful. Reabsorption is just basically heal 15% affected by dampening on a 2-minute cooldown, which is not that great either. Because for one, if it wasn't affected by dampening, it actually wouldn't be awful, and I might even take it sometimes. But basically dampening starts instantly in every single bracket, or it starts at 10% in threes, and then it starts instantly in every other bracket. So I don't really like it here because it's never going to heal you for the full amount. So yeah, those are kind of my opinions on those. And the mass polymorph, some people ask me why we never take this. It's just a really awful ability. I mean, the way you would change this, I think it would be a lot better is if it was a ranged ability instead of around the person. So I'll actually take it real quick just to show you my point. Now, if the ability was, instead of it being a radius around the player, if it was a targeted ability and then I casted it and then everyone around that target would become a sheep, I think this ability would actually be pretty sick. But I don't like it too much now because it's just really hard to ever get value out of, and almost always it's going to be more worth to have just Ring of Frost anyways, which is a shorter cooldown on top of that. And it's on a different school, so if you use it, get kicked, you still have your Arcane school, whereas this, it's just not, it's just a worse Ring of Frost, basically. So that's kind of my opinion about that as well, in case a lot of you were wondering. So yeah, now we'll go on to PvP Burst. Okie dokie. So basically, we're going to talk a little bit more about, we're going to talk about how to do damage as Arcane Mage. So just in a scenario where you're able to free cast, this is what your damage is going to look like. You're going to have your badge trinket. Sometimes, so basically to talk about this a little bit more, I do use badge when I'm playing with something that's setup based, like an Asa Rogue, Sub Rogue, Shadow Priest, stuff like that. But if I'm playing in solo shuffle and I'm playing with like consistent damage based classes like Demon Hunters, Death Knights, Warlocks, something where you just want more consistent damage throughout the game, I would use this. And then if you know you're going to be trained, you can also use Emblem. However, I don't think you really need it as Arcane. I would play this more as Fire. But yeah, for this purpose, we will use Badge. It's on cooldown right now, but basically what you would do is you would Badge. I have it macroed with my Magi. Somewhere right here. So I think this is probably one of the best abilities you can macro it to. Basically what you want to do is you want to Mass Invis, Ring of Fire, Arcane Surge, Mash Magi at the same time, consume your clear casting missiles here, palm 2 Arcane Blasts, barrage, and then here is a bit of a priority system. You would barrage if there's a DPS on you into another orb, and then if you had the ability to cast, this is when you could consume clear castings into 2 more Arcane Blasts to consume another precision, and then consume missiles as you get them. And you would want to throw the barrage with that second blast too, because whenever you barrage, you consume the precisions, and then you want to consume your harmony stacks too. So the harmony basically reads, whenever the way you're dealing damage is Arcane. I'll just break down some of the modifiers for you if you guys are confused. So basically you're going to Arcane Surge, which is kind of like your Combustion or your Icy Veins on the other 2 specs. You're going to use it. It's going to give you a nice 35% spell damage increase. Then you are going to Touch of the Magi, which is going to instantly fill your Arcane charges. It gives you 4 Arcane charges. And then from here, you're going to consume your clear casting missiles. You're pretty much always going to get a clear casting from Arcane Surge, because clear casting reads for however much mana you spend, you have a 1% chance to gain clear casting, and Arcane Surge clears your entire mana bar. So it's almost 100% chance to get a clear casting from Arcane Surge. You have to get really super unlucky if you don't. I've had it happen a couple times, but it's really, really rare. So then you spend the clear casting, and then once you do that, you're going to get this buff. Consuming clear casting increases the damage of your next 2 Arcane Blasts by 20%. This is actually 15% in PvP from a recent nerf. So you're going to consume that. Now you have your increased blast damage. Then you want to cancel that missiles, because normally that would get interrupted. If you do read the scenario where you're not going to get interrupted, then you can let that missiles go off more so that you can get a bigger harmony stack. And we'll talk about harmony now. Each time Arcane Missiles hits the enemy, the damage of your next Arcane Barrage is increased by 5%. This effect stacks up to 20 times. It's actually only 10 times in PvP, so you can essentially get an extra 50% Arcane Barrage damage. And by the time you throw your Barrage, most likely they'll be in execute range, so it'll deal an additional 100% damage. However, this is also nerfed to 65% in PvP. So now that you kind of know a little bit more about the modifiers, I will show you it again. However, I'm not going to do it at full speed. I'm going to kind of take a second between each global so you guys can see it a little bit slower paced. So basically, to break it down, mass invis ideally if you can. I like to fit a Ring of Fire cast in my mass invis since it doesn't break. You can also replace this Ring of Fire with a Ring of Frost. So you could put an invisible Ring of Frost around the target, or you can Ring of Fire. Surge, because it doesn't break your mass invis. Magi, consume the clear casting. You can let it go off if no interrupts. Now you want to consume Palm, double blast. I have 8 stacks in my Harmony. I throw that in, and that's going to do 100. That does big damage. And then from here, with the remaining couple of seconds of your Arcane Surge, it's going to be a priority system. If you have DPS training you or kicks are available, as you can see here, my Omnibar doesn't show kicks. If I was fighting a Shaman and a Warrior and it said they had kicks, then I would just, from there with the rest of my Surge, I would just Orb to get more charges, and then Barrage again because they would be in execute range. Basically, if we read our mastery here, Arcane charges increases the damage of your Arcane Blast by an additional 6% and Arcane Barrage by 3, and then all other Arcane damage by 10. So the more Arcane charges you have, the more damage your barrages and blasts are doing. So that's why you're always having that's why whenever you Magi, you are doing the clear casting double blast. You never want to palm blast with like all of your cooldowns up if you don't have 4 arcane charges. And then because you have 4 arcane charges here, your barrage is going to also deal however much more damage. I think it's like 12% or something. So you never also want to sit here. So that was kind of the burst. That was like our general burst rotation. I do kind of want to go over our filler damage now. And the way our filler damage is going to work is, so as you can see here, let me just use Surge. So we used Surge. It's on cooldown. Now, how are we doing damage outside of this? Well, first things first is you never want to start to do damage without a full set of arcane charges. So one thing I would never do is I would never sit here and just cast a 0 charge arcane blast. Most of the time to get these charges, what you want to do is you want to try to set up like a bowling lane of targets, because however many targets your orb hits, that's how many arcane charges you're going to get. You can see here grants 1 arcane charge, and every time it deals damage, it grants another one. So as you can see here, you could get it into a nice lane of people. It gives you full charges instantly, and then from here you can just start casting an arcane blast if no one's on you. You do actually a fair amount of damage by just sitting here casting arcane blasts. I did get a nice lucky surge proc there, so that was nice. Ring of Fire is really good. This is basically how you're doing consistent damage. Is now that I have a clear casting, I can consume that. I do have my precision buff, and then I would blast barrage because that's going to consume my 2 nether precisions and my harmony stacks that I had at 8. And then basically you just want to keep doing this. Barrage, get your stacks, consume the clear castings, blast, barrage, get the stacks, clear castings, blast, barrage. This is off cooldown now, so I'll use that to get my full stacks again because I didn't have any orbs. Now I'll just use my 2 stacks here, use my harmony stacks, do my orb. I have clear casting. I'll just cancel the surge proc because that's unrealistic. Blast, barrage. Now I'm fully out of everything, so what I would do is I would shifting power here. If you didn't have shifting power and you had no orbs, so let's just say I'm in this scenario where I basically can't generate any arcane charges, what you would want to do here typically is arcane blast or arcane explosion per target hit, or basically every arcane explosion is going to give you 1 charge, so that's something you can do. This also helps you to generate clear castings because you can see whenever you arcane explosion, you're using like 7% mana per time, so that's going to be really nice. It accomplishes giving you clear castings and giving you arcane charges. So there's something else I wanted to talk about here with filler damage, and that is Radiant Spark. The reason I didn't put this in burst damage is because you don't really ever combine the two with Arcane Surge. I've talked about this in my starter Arcane Mage guide. It's too telegraphed. It takes too long to set up. If I were to Surge into Radiant, those are two casts that are really difficult to get off. The only time you would ever do it is after you burst. So I'll give you a quick scenario on that. So we're just going to do our normal damage rotation, our normal burst rotation like I mentioned. Boom, boom. And then from here, you could actually do it late if there are no interrupts. Radiant Spark, send in the 3 missiles, blast, blast, barrage at the end of your surge. Now I do want to break down that a little bit more. But like I said, I would never use like surge into Radiant right away. You can use it after your initial like instant burst rotation. If you still have like a couple seconds left on surge, but I would never do it directly after my surge, really. I don't know. There's never really a scenario where that's going to always be the right answer because it's too hard to get off in a realistic scenario. It delays the damage, so you're actually more bursty whenever you do all your instants without the Radiant. But I do want to talk a little bit about Radiant in terms of filler damage. Basically, let's say you had none of these buttons. I'll just go ahead and use all these. So we have no Palm, we have no Magi. What you can actually do is just simply get a clear casting. You can Radiant, missiles for 3, blast, blast, barrage. And the reason why you're doing this, again, I've already made a video about this concept, talking about it, but I will explain it again briefly here. Basically what you're doing is Radiant Spark does damage like this. It modifies, I'll just read the tooltip here. The target takes 10% increased damage from your direct damage, damaging spells, stacking each time they are struck. This effect ends after 4 spells. So each attack you do into Radiant does 10% more damage. The first one's going to deal 10%, second one's going to deal 20, so on and so forth. So the reasoning why you're sending in the 3 missiles, and the way I do this is I have a stop casting macro on mouse wheel down. Right somewhere around here, right here. So this is how I stop casting. As you can see, when I missiles, I can instantly mouse wheel down and it will cancel the missiles. So that's how I go about getting it to 3 charges. This is going to take some practice. It's going to take some feeling it out. Basically, you can also just kind of watch whenever the 3 missiles hit, but you'll have a clear casting, so it'll be a lot faster. Like I said, this is going to take some practice to know when there's 3. But basically, to break it down, like I said, the way you want to use Radiant is whenever you're trying to do consistent damage. So you get full charges. I'm trying to get a clear casting. I have it. I would Radiant missiles for 3. I kind of fucked up here. And then you would blast barrage on the 4th one. Blast barrage. And the reasoning why you're doing this is because the 40% from the 4 stack Radiant is going to consume, it's going to get consumed by your Arcane Blast and by your Barrage. So your Arcane Blast is going to do 40% more, and your Barrage is going to do 40% more. So let me not fuck it up this time. As you can see, if you accidentally do get it to 4 stacks, you can do what I did and just do a single Blast Barrage instead of consuming your 2 Arcane Blasts. So I'd get the full stacks, trying to get a clear casting here. You would probably just have a clear casting if you were doing this in a real scenario. Sometimes you can fish for it though. So if you do have DPS Trinket, you can use that. Radiant Spark, missiles for 3, cancel it, Arcane Blast twice to use both precisions, and then Barrage, like blast and then spam Barrage, because you need these to go off at the exact same time to both be consumed by the 4th Radiant Spark. I do want to talk a little bit about why you're getting it to the end. So when you Radiant, you want to do the missiles because you don't really care about the first couple of modifiers. When you Radiant, like this one is only increased by 10%. So like I said, you want to missiles those ones because you don't really care about those like baby modifiers. You want the big ones, the 30 and the 40. And then those are both going to be consumed by your 2 next Arcane Blasts and your Barrage. So that's kind of how you're doing filler damage. This is obviously assuming that you aren't being trained. We will talk about being trained later, but just to kind of like break it down a little bit right now, if you're getting trained really heavily, the best way you can just do damage is by, for one, spam spell stealing the target is going to really help move the game forward while you're being trained. You also would just have what I would do a lot, because you're running precog. Again, we're going to talk about all this later, but I just want to throw it in a little bit now. Basically, whenever you get clear casting missiles like this, you can walk around while moving. If you're getting trained really hard, I like to juke with these missiles, which is going to give you a lot of precog uptime, because people don't think you're going to juke the clear casting missiles. So, you know, when you're getting attacked, you're generating a lot from a couple things. You're getting clear casting procs from time anomaly. You're getting the 10% chance from energized barriers. You're just getting a lot of clear castings, a lot when you're getting trained. So you're always kind of like pump faking your missiles, trying to get those precog windows. You're throwing your barrages, your orbs. You're just trying to pump fake missiles so you can get some harmony stacks rolling, so that whenever you can throw a barrage in there, it's actually hitting a little bit harder, because that's how you're doing your main damage, is barrage and orb while you're being trained. Another thing you can do is like ring of fire to like bait getting kicked, and then that's when you could start, you know, casting some damage. But yeah, I just want to throw that in there briefly. Like I said, we'll talk more in depth about that later, but let's just continue. Now we're going to talk a little bit about your utility kit. So let's get into that. Okay, so let's just go over some of the common abilities that we do use in our utility kit. So Mage has a lot of utility in this patch. This is probably the most utility I've ever seen Mage have at one point. So you have a couple different abilities. First, we'll talk about Dragon's Breath. It's a 45-second cooldown cone in front of you. So if you can see here, I'll point my camera down. It's a nice cone effect. It has pretty decent range. I would say this is probably the farthest range that you can get away with. Like me to this target. I'm actually surprised it kind of hit that target. So that's kind of like how you can visualize it, like just in this little area here, this little cone. It's going to disorient for people for 3 seconds. It's actually 3 seconds in PvP, not 4. Does a small amount of damage, and commonly you're using this, if you're getting trained, you can use it to peel yourself, like you can DB them, make some distance, but commonly you're using this for setups, like, you know, trying to DB and then pair it with a polymorph. There's like little counterplay to that, you know, DB polymorph, unless you can get stopped by another DPS. So those are kind of how you're using DB and poly. Polymorph is a really good ability. Obviously, mages, you can spam it. It has no cooldown. You can use this a lot to either peel DPS off you. One thing that you have to kind of do as a mage is play around the healer's dispel. So healers have as you can see here, I'm pulling it up. I track healer's dispels. It has an 8-second cooldown. So something you can do a lot is kind of weave in and out of healer's dispels. Like if you sheep a target and he dispels it, then you would Nova. And then, or you could do it the other way. If you Nova DPS, they get dispelled, then you would, let's just say this is a sheep cast because I can't cast sheep, then you could sheep. Now they have to sit that full because the healer has no dispel. You know, there are a lot of diverse ways that you can use polymorph. That's pretty much the primary one. You know, you're using it to peel yourself, sheep the healer, and then you could start popping damage on the DPS. Ring of Frost is another one. You can either use this a couple different ways. The way you use it a lot as Arcane is with Mass Invis, because when you Mass Invis Ring of Frost, the enemy actually can't see the Ring of Frost. So if you were the enemy right now, this would be invisible. You would have no idea it's even there. So that's kind of like the main way you're using it as Arcane. You can use it obviously a bunch of different ways. It's basically a polymorph that is aimed and on a frost school. So it is on DR with polymorph. That's what, but I basically call it a aimed frost polymorph. So yeah, you can use that to your advantage. Sometimes you can put it around yourself, or you could put it over here and then blink into it, like if you're playing Shimmer. Yeah, there are a lot of ways you can use this to like get DPS off you as well. So that is something that you could do more often. Supernova, we've already talked about this ability. It's basically another counter spell, or you can use it to interrupt mobility options like we were talking about earlier. Ice Nova is a big one. Ice Nova is on its own DR, or it doesn't DR. So you can see I just Nova to target there, and then if I Nova them, it's also a full Nova, not DR'd. So this is really good. I never really use Ice Nova for damage. It's mainly to just kind of aids people. It's like another route. Like let's say your route is ending, like your Nova is about to end and you know they want to use a mobility option to get to you, and you're like snare walking to a pillar, you're not quite there, you need that extra Nova, you Nova them for 1 second, and then you're able to make it around the pillar, you know? And then they can't use the mobility option on you. So it's just a really, really cool ability that you can use to kind of screw people over in terms of their mobility. Mass Invis, you know, this ability is really high skill. Let's say you're playing RM2s or something, your rogue gets stunned, healer's casting mind games on him, you can mass invis your rogue to interrupt the mind games cast on him. You can use it for yourself to get extra casts off, do the mass invis Ring of Frost. You can even put an invisible Ring of Fire. It still kind of fit your Arcane Surge cast in there, not really. You're really using this a lot in the opener, in like a solo shuffle environment where it's very chaotic. The only times you're really ever going to be able to mass invis is from the opener, or when you come out of Ice Block, because you'll have removed all of your bleeds. So you can come out, mass invis. There are so many things you can do with this ability. Keep in mind it makes your entire team invisible. So anyone within 40 yards makes them all invisible. So you can use this on your healer so that they can immediately get a drink off. Or you could use it in conjunction with your priest's mobility. Let's say they want to fade feather themselves. You can mass invis him so he can go fear people. Really, really diverse, like I said. Spell steal is really good. Basically, a priority of things that you're looking to spell steal as a mage is Hots from a Resto Druid. You could spell steal NS from a Resto Druid if you're really quick. You could spell steal Power Infusion is a really, really big one because that's going to give you extra haste. Power Infusion from enemy priest is actually purgeable. Spell stealing enemy mages, barriers, and altars is always a good thing. There's probably a lot more that I've left out. I'll kind of compile a list and put it on the screen here so that you guys can see like a lot of really, really high value spell steals. Basically, we can just keep talking here. Slow is a really, really good ability. I try to maintain high slow up time on a lot of targets. Keep in mind that with Chrono Shift, that also slows the target, and this slow is undispellable. So this goes back to weaving dispels. You know, you have Nova, Sheep, and Slow, all to kind of bait a healer's dispel. And then if you notice that he does press dispel on any of those, you can really just be super annoying. And you can see I'm even running mass slow and slowing all of these people with a single global. You would definitely want to try to keep this up in as many targets as you can. A scenario that I really like is if a enemy Holy Priest chastises my healer and I see him running in for a fear, I can actually use my focus slow macro on the healer to slow him, and then he has to use a global to dispel himself because then he can't reach the healer now. And then on his dispel global, you can Ice Nova them. So like I said, you're really just trying to be annoying with this ability. Like you can really annoy some people with slow, especially mass slow. If you use it on like a DK or Windwalker or the 2 DPS are stacked, this ability is going to be really high value. Frost Nova, we've already talked a lot about this ability. We've talked about you know, baiting out the spells, using the Imp Nova talent. Something that I do want to talk about this ability is whenever you're running around a pillar, what you can do kind of often is if a DPS is waddling towards you and you're on a pillar, you can peek out real quick and Nova and then go back. That's something that's going to be really aids for people to deal with, and that's going to teach you how to like properly use the pillars. And then the last ability really in your utility kit is Remove Curse. Remove Curse is a pretty solid ability. I do have a nice macro for this, which I will include in the description. Let's see if I can find it. So this macro is going to remove curse on yourself if no one's targeted or an enemy is targeted. Oh, sorry, I had him on mouse over. So enemy targeted on me. It's going to do mouse over if you have a mouse over. And then yeah, it's really dope for that reason. Basically, the things you're trying to remove is big one is hex. If a shaman hexes someone on your team, your next global is always going to be remove curse. You need to instantly see that and remove it. Some things you can remove that are also really annoying is like against warlocks, they will put something called havoc on you. I have a nice tracker right here. Curse, or sorry, tongues. It's going to increase the casting time of all your spells, and this ability is actually also bugged. It also reduces your overall GCD time, so it's actually going to decrease your global cooldown as well. So when you have this on you, your globals are going to take longer, and that's why this is a really high value remove curse. I recommend making like a tell me when for it. You guys can get my tell me when export from my Discord. Another one is Curse of Exhaustion or Curse of Havoc. Exhaustion is basically a slow, and then Havoc is going to be from Destro Warlocks, where they duplicate their spells. So basically, they're gonna do double coils, double chaos bolts. That one is also high value, needs to be dispelled. Usually the next global after it's applied. And then I think the last one is Agony, which is an Affliction Warlock's curse, like how they're dealing damage. Usually that one is high value to dispel. However, the good warlocks, I swear, when you dispel their agony, they track your dispel and then they'll immediately tongues you. And then you can't use remove curse to remove the tongues for another 8 seconds because it does have an 8-second cooldown. So now that you guys know a little bit more how about to use your utility kit, I hope that little guide there helped. Now we're going to go on to defensives and how to use those properly. So let's get into that. Okay, so in terms of defensive cooldowns for Mage, you have Ice Block, Alter Time, your Prismatic Barrier, Greater Invis, and Mirror Images. So basically just to start, Ice Block, pretty straightforward ability, encases you in a block of ice, protecting you from all attacks and damage for 10 seconds. But during that time, you cannot attack, move, or cast. And then after using Ice Block, you get Hypothermia, which means you can't block again for 30 seconds. This is only relevant on Frost Mage, where you have Cold Snap to grant you 2 ice blocks with the whole hypothermia thing. Basically, block should be used in terms of getting the most value out of it as possible. So you can block like a big, basically defensive trade in terms of making correct trades with Ice Block would entail Berserk from like Incarn, or what is it called, Serenity from a Monk, if you don't have other options to get out of the way of damage. You also have like an Arcane Search Go from a Mage, or Combustion. For other classes, it might look like here, let me just pull up a list of cooldowns here, / Gladius EX, or sorry, not EX, Omnibar. So we can just look through all of our damaging cooldowns here for a couple different classes and say like what is their biggest defensive cooldown and how you should properly trade. For DKs, A-Bomb Limb is definitely a big one. I'm not saying that you necessarily always have to block, but what I'm saying is that it's typically better if when you have to block, it's in a direct trade of these cooldowns. So being able to block these big cooldowns most of the time will be a good trade if you have to block. I'm not saying you always block when you see these cooldowns. I'm just saying, these are typically good trades to make. For this one, it would probably be the Hunt. For Demon Hunter, for Druid, like I said, Incarn or Berserk is the big one for Feral and Moonkin. Evoker doesn't really have like a giant one. They do have the Dragon Rage with Tip the Scales Fire Breath, but honestly, you don't really see too many Devastation Evokers. For Hunters, they kind of have a lot of consistent damage in terms of survival and Beast Mastery. If you can line up, I guess, block with their Bestial Wrath Go, that's pretty good. And then for Hunters, Marksmanship, you have the Double Tap True Shot Go, which is going to be this cooldown here. See if I can find it. Doesn't look like it's on here, but basically Double Tap and True Shot are the 2 buttons that you want to look out for. Marksman. For Mage, if you can line up your Ice Block with Combustion, Icy Veins, or Arcane Surge, those are their biggest offensive cooldowns. So that's going to be the best, cooldown trade for that. For Monk, it's going to be Serenity or Images. I don't think there's a thing for Serenity on here. Nope. Need to add a lot of this Omnibar. For Paladin, it's going to be Wings. For Priest, a lot of the times it's going to be Mind Games with Dark Archangel. For Rogue, mainly you're looking at Shadow Dance. If it's like a sub rogue, Death Mark is a huge one for Assassination Rogue. If you block before Death Mark, and then they have Death Mark, obviously that is really unfortunate. And then for Outlaw Rogue, it is their Adrenaline Rush, I think. But either way, Outlaw is a very consistent base damage class. So for Shamans, they do have Ascendance, but pretty sure they only get procs from it. They only get Ascendance procs. Basically, what you're looking out for with a Shaman is just kind of like the instant lava burst with Echo Shock or Echoing Shock. So that's for that. And then Warlocks obviously have a lot of consistent damage as well. For Demon Warlocks, if you can block, I guess, line up your block with their Demonic Tyrant and Nether Portal, that is typically a good thing. And then for the other two specs, I believe they are just kind of very consistent. You don't see a whole lot of Destruction Warlocks, but yeah. Anyways, those are kind of like just general cooldowns that typically trade pretty well. And that if you do have to block outside of those cooldowns, typically it is lower value, or it definitely sucks a little bit more. So just a little thing to talk about there. Altar Time. This is a really big kind of cooldown here. So for Altar Time, I see a lot of people using this ability incorrectly. Basically, you want to pop it ideally at a high amount of HP. So you don't want to wait to pop this too long, because if you alter at a lower amount of HP, you're not getting as much value. And the way that you want to kind of use alter is you want to kite away from your initial position, and then once you've kind of kited those DPS away from your initial position, that's when you could alter back. So if you have DPS who are training you, you would want to alter time at a decent HP, and then maybe you could pair a blink. So I'll just go normal blink. So you would want to alter, then you would want to blink away, and then the DPS would use a mobility option. You could blast wave them off you. They would have to use another mobility option, and then by this time you might be pretty low, so you want to root them over here at this like spot that you were before, and then when you alter back, you'll be even farther away from them and have already gotten some mobility options from them. And then you also have another blink from the Master of Time talent, which resets the blink cooldown. So there's a lot of different ways you can use alter time. That is probably the primary one, if just in terms of defense and kiting. So another thing to talk about is alter time is purgeable. So you can see I actually have this little thing here that tells me how many buffs I have. So you can see every time I get another tempo buff, it tells me, so now I have 2 sets of purge protection. If I were to barrier, it would say 3. And then when I alter time, it puts it in the middle here as well. So now I have 4 buffs. So I know how unlikely it is, or how likely it is to get purged. So one thing you kind of want to do with your alter time is you always want to line the purges. So like priest can purge you, shaman can purge you, mages can purge you, demon hunters and regular hunters have a purge on a 10-second cooldown. Evokers can purge you with fire breath if they're playing the talent. I think warlocks fell hunter has a purge tied to it as well. So you need to understand that getting purged on alter time is definitely not a good thing, and you need to take measures to avoid this. So if you alter time here, and you can see that there's a mage right here, then you would want to alter, and you would want to kite away from the mage with your alter. So now you're accomplishing 2 things at once. You're kiting the DPS, and you're lining the purge as well. He blinks in at you. You would want to like keep lining him, and then if you could, right before you go back, you could do the Nova and then go back. Another thing with alter time is if you use it at like let's say a lower HP, if I were to alter at 35%, because it was the only cooldown I had, and you wanted to try to squeeze any value out of that as you could, and then your healer uses a defensive cooldown like Guardian and tops you, you would want to cancel that alter. You wouldn't want to alter back to 35%, so you need a macro that is going to cancel aura your alter time. I use it, and like you can use this as whatever. You could get this to show whatever ability, or you could just have this macro hidden, like maybe you could just bind it in some like hidden action bar that you have, so I would definitely have this macro for whenever you use it. Like you can see I'm at 59%. If I were to use it and then get healed up by my healer, you would see that my weak aura turns the altar red. So I know that this altar is going to be a negative weak aura, or sorry, a negative heal. So I would cancel that altar, because I wouldn't want to alter back to lower HP. So anyways, that's all really about altar time. Now to talk about barrier. Barrier, I see commonly being misused actually, because this talent right here, Energized Barrier, adds another level to barrier, to using it correctly. So obviously when you use it, you get the damage reduction, right? And the Arcane Barrier actually has, the 3 different specs have different effects. So this one for Arcane is magic damage reduced by 15% and duration of harmful magic effects reduced by 25%. So if you have this barrier up while you have a full row of dots, you'll take less damage. And if you get, let's say, Dragon's Breath, Feared, Cloned, Polyed while you have Prismatic Barrier up, it's also going to be a shorter duration. But basically what I want to talk about with barrier is how people use it incorrectly in terms of only using it for damage absorption, like when they're using it for purely just HP. They use it off cooldown for HP, which is good, obviously, but you need to pair it with another task, which is using it for kiting. So obviously you need to use it when you're getting attacked. So let me get attacked here. I'm at 76% HP. Instead of just pressing it willy-nilly while a monk is, let's say, Fist of Furying me or something, you would want to try to get a little bit closer to some sort of pillar. You either want to wait for them to be on global cooldown, because when you press barrier, you're going to remove all snares on yourself. So you're going to go from this movement speed to this movement speed. So you need to do this in a way that's going to be beneficial to you, to where you can actually get the DPS off you. This is like the number one thing that I see people doing wrong, and why people can't get DPS off them, because as a mage, you aren't innately tanky like other classes are. You don't passively survive. How well you survive is how well you're kiting DPS and how well you're minimizing damage taken. So you need to really minimize the amount of uptime that DPS have on you, and this comes through using your defensive and mobility toolkit correctly. And that's kind of why I'm trying to reiterate how important this is, because as an Arcane mage, you are really trying to move around the map. Like, your mobility as Arcane is really insane. So if you get snared, you can barrier to remove that snare. So you need to do this. You need to take this into consideration when using your barrier. You don't want to just use it and then instantly get re-slowed. Basically, the way you would outplay this is, I actually have a weak aura that I can't look at because I'm in combat, because this thing is keeping me in combat. There it is. So I have this weak aura that basically, if this is an enemy nameplate over here, you can see that on the left side of their nameplate is an ability. So this would tell me every single global that they use, and it tells me when they're on GCD. So whenever I see that they're on GCD, that is a really good time that you can use it. Let's say if you're on a pillar and you're snared, you see they're on global cooldown, then you know you can barrier to remove your snares, and they can't re-slow you right away because they're still on global. So that's something that you should really take advantage of. It's kind of the main way I manage when I use my barriers. So that I just wanted to throw in. Hope that helps. Now to talk about G Invis a little bit. So Greater Invis is a pretty good talent when you play it. It's basically a 60% damage reduction, which is really nice to have on Mage. So basically you use it, you get attacked, and then it gives you the 60% damage reduction, as you saw there, after you reappear. So obviously that's a really, really high value, 60%. You want to try to line this up with people's minor burst cooldowns or major burst cooldowns. So for example, if a monk serenities you or leg sweeps you and you're playing Shimmer and you have no ice block, and he puts, he leg sweeps you, trinket, let's say you don't have trinket alter, right? The only thing you have is trinket greater invis, then that's a great option, because essentially you're going to reduce the amount of damage you take on their big burst cooldowns. Basically, yeah, like I said, you just want to try to line this up with big defensives or big offensives from the enemy team. and you want to try not to overlap too much. For example, you don't want a greater invis and then end up having to block anyways, because then it could just be said, if you just blocked, then you're getting the value from that trade more efficiently because you're not overlapping defensives. So you want to try to really separate your G invis from your block. However, I do recommend pairing alter with G invis and mirror images. So a common scenario is, let's say a warrior puts you in a spear of bastion, right? If you alter time in the spear, you're going to get bursted down pretty quick, because keep in mind alter lasts 10 seconds. So you're going to get bursted down relatively quickly, and you're going to have to alter back before the spear is even over. But if you can pair these damage reductions, like you alter G invis, that's going to give you a 60% damage reduction, which is going to allow your alter to last a little bit longer. And then once your G invis is up, you could mirror images as well, for another, just a short period of damage reduction. So I think it's really good to pair those together. And then, like I said, you get out of the spear. That's when you could blink away and then use your barrier to remove your snare and kite around the pillar. And you saved pretty much all of your big defensive cooldowns, which is good. Now we will talk a little bit about mirror image. Mirror image is maybe the worst ability in the entire game. A lot of people think this ability is better than it is. It says, while your images are active, damage taken is reduced by 20%. Taking direct damage will cause one of your images to dissipate. Basically, the reason why this ability is so bad is because the images dissipate to dot damage as well. I don't know if that's bugged or whatever, but it's been like this for a long time, and it's really just not a great cooldown. But the way I use this ability a lot is primarily against hunters, is when you can find the most value out of it. The reason being is a lot of the times they will pair their intim, which is their stun. A lot of times they'll intim your healer into a trap. So what you can do, basically, since the intim is the heads up, or the how they telegraph that they want to go for a trap, if they intim my healer, in my mind, I see it on my big debuffs frame, on my raid frames, and I know exactly what's going to happen after that. Let's say this guy's my healer. We'll go with this guy right here, this hunter. So this is my healer. He gets intimed. I'll blink on him to try to eat the trap, but instead of just sitting on him like by myself, since that's only kind of like a 50-50, I'll move to the side and I'll summon my mirror images so that they can help me try to eat the trap. The mirrors summon in a triangle behind you, so that's something to keep in mind. I'll show you in a sec here. So like I said, just an example here, if my healer gets intimed, I blink on top of him, put a mirror, like I'd stand here, put a mirror, and then also stand on him, and now I have an extra thing for a second, because you saw while he was spawning, he stood still on the healer. That's really how I use this ability 9 times out of 10. Like, if I'm using it outside of that, it kind of always feels like a dead global, because you summon them, and if you're being attacked, most of the time 0.5 to 1 second later, they're instantly all gone. I would like to see this ability either fixed or reworked, in terms of like making it to where there was a cap. So if you use this ability, there would be like a 1 second internal cooldown on your mirrors disappearing, which I believe is how it should work. But right now, if you get hit once, they all instantly disappear. So the only way you can get value out of this is if you use mirrors on a big damaging global. So if a monk presses Strike of the Windlord and you press mirror images 1 second before that, you would get the damage reduc on that global. But yeah, that's pretty much how you have to use it. Like I said, I would like to see the ability buffed, to where they don't all instantly disappear. Like I said, I don't know if that's a bug or whatever, but that's kind of all you have in your defensive toolkit as a mage. Like I said earlier, it comes down to how well you're using your toolkit is going to dictate how tanky you are as a mage. You aren't passively tanky like a Shadow Priest or a Demo Warlock or an Affliction Warlock. It actually comes down to how well you are kiting the DPS, making sure they have a little uptime on you, how well you're preemptively positioned against casters, so that you can avoid even being in line to take damage versus casters. But that's all I really have for the defensive portion. So now we will get on to our mobility. Okay, so now we're going to discuss some mobility options that we have to us on Mage. So the first one is going to be Blink. Basically, we already kind of talked about Blink versus Shimmer, so there's not really too much more to say. Just to reiterate, Blink is really nice because it can remove you from stuns. The downside is that it does put you on global, as to where Shimmer doesn't put you on global and lets you move while casting, or like blink mid cast. However, we do receive ice flows when we play regular blink, and ice flows is a really good talent because it lets you cast while moving. One tip I have with ice flows is to put it on a mouse bind so that you can do it mid cast. So let's say I have Ring of Fire, which is Shift R. If you guys do want to see here, I'll actually do this. I'll actually show you my mouse. So my mouse and keyboard are right here. So if you see, whenever I am casting, let's say Shift R, so that's this finger right here, and then on my mouse, this thumb button right here is my ice flows. So I Shift R, and then mid cast, instead of my left hand having to do more work here, I can ice flows and press it at the same time. So ice flows, Ring of Fire, and then if I wanted to juke it, I could mouse wheel down. So that's why I prefer these binds. Like you can Ring of Frost, ice flows, and then start moving. Shifting Power, ice flows. So I think having this bind on your mouse is actually really beneficial, because it allows you to kind of do a lot of stuff with your left hand, which you're already kind of doing, since a lot of your binds are actually going to be with your keyboard, or at least that is the case for me. So that's why I think having it on a mouse bind is really strong. A lot of people say they kind of forget about this ability. I'm not really sure how to kind of help you guys remember, other than maybe putting it in an area on your action bars that is more relevant. But I would highly recommend practicing this ability and getting good with it. But yeah, the next mobility option that we have here is Alter Time. So the reason I put Alter Time as also a mobility option is, let's say you need to get around this pillar and you're low HP. You're like 2%, not 2%, let's say you're 10% life. Since Alter isn't going to get too much value at 10% life, what you could do to get to this pillar is blink, alter, immediately alter back, and then that will refund you another charge of blink from Master of Time. So what I did there was basically, I was over here. I pressed the blink, which put me about right here. And then you can see my Alter Time bind is X. I basically just pressed X 2 times, back to back, so like this, boom, boom. And then that gave me another blink charge. So you can use Alter Time in a different way for mobility. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well. The next one is Chrono Shift. So obviously when you throw a barrage, you slow the enemy by 50% and you get 50% movement speed. I'm not going to say that you should try to have 100% uptime on this, because that's not always the case. Sometimes when you're bursting, you won't be barraging because you'll be doing damage. But then just keep in mind, after you throw a barrage, that your movement speed will be heavily increased. And then you can also pair this with Barrier to remove any snares that you have on yourself. And that should keep you moving. One thing I do want to say with Chrono Shift is keep in mind it does remove all of your arcane charges. So if you had 4 and then you Chrono Shift for mobility, you wouldn't want to start bursting because you have no charges. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then Barrier, obviously we've talked about Barrier for mobility. So that's kind of all we have for mobility on Arcane Mage. But yeah, that is pretty crazy. We also have Displace, which we've also talked about in the talent section. So that's all really for mobility. So now we're going to get on to how to be trained as an Arcane Mage. So here's where we start going over some of the more situational concepts we've talked about so far. We've talked about what race to pick, how to build your character with stat, prio, enchants, and gear, how you should be setting up your talent builds, how you should be doing your burst, and how you would do damage in your downtime and your filler downtime. And then we've kind of went through each ability individually and discussed how we can get the most value out of each ability on an individual level. And now we're going to start to get into some of the more situational concepts, such as being trained, positioning, landing CC, when to land CC. So let's get into that now. Okay, so this is going to be a section about basically what we're going to talk about is how to get trained as an arcane mage. So obviously with arcane, you're casting a lot of your damage via arcane blast, missiles, getting ring of fires off, and then ultimately also getting the surge off. But also it could come down to just getting your shifting powers and getting your radiant spark cast off as well. So basically, there's a couple things we want to keep in mind here. And one is that we need to be using our mobility options efficiently. So basically, how you should kind of approach this concept of being trained by 2 melee DPS is that there's something in the game where it's you're trading cooldowns. That's pretty much all the game is who can trade their cooldowns better, and this is just the same concept for mobility as well. There's a mobility trade, so you're basically trying to win and do some small interactions that are going to help you stay ahead of the mobility race or the mobility trading, and then we will kind of illustrate what that looks like with the upcoming clip that I will show you. So we need to be using our mobility options efficiently. We need to be making usage of precognition, which is the PvP talent that you get from juking a kick. Whenever you effectively juke and interrupt, you get a little 4-second window of immunity to any type of crowd control, and you get a nice 15% haste buff on top of that. Another thing we're going to be doing is using our positioning to ultimately make it harder for the DPS to want to continue to pursue training us. So the way we can use our positioning is sort of, if we drag them away from their healer, as you guys will see later, if we drag them away from the healer and they overextend, that makes it very easy and makes them very vulnerable to getting either DB sheeped behind pillar, or you can root them into like a ring of frost around the corner. Basically, if you just drag them to a bad spot, you can ultimately either kill them or force their healer out to a bad spot. Ultimately, your kiting pattern needs to be keeping all this stuff in mind, so we will go over that as well. And then one thing that we want to think about when we're getting trained is our positioning in relation to our healer's positioning. So we don't want to kite out of our healer's LOS. And then to kind of add to this, we want to keep in mind what CC our healer is in. Because whenever our healer gets crowd controlled, that is a very good thing to notice right away, because then you're able to kind of know that for the next couple of seconds are the seconds that you really need to focus on defensive positioning. So let's try to just keep these in mind and refer back to these at one point. But for now, I do want to watch a gameplay video, which is going to further illustrate basically how we want to kite the DPS. So let me just pause here and then I will go to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch this game here. As you guys can see, we're fighting a Windwalker and a Demon Hunter, which are both, two melee classes that have a lot of mobility, ability to stay on a target. So one thing that's important is setting yourself up early. So as you can notice here, when the game started, I was waiting for my team to get the eye, the spectral sight, because had this guy gotten me out of stealth, and he throw glazed me, which does put a dot on you, then from there the game would be not as ideal as we want, because we can get a really, really good opener rolling here with a mass invis. So I'm waiting for this. They finally get it here in a sec, where it expires. Now I am safe to come out. So I want to set myself up really good in the early game with mass invis. One thing I'm going to try to look for here is a mass invis ring of frost. So I'm going to do that right on top of the healer's positioning. As my regular invis was about to end. I'll just back it up real quick. Sorry. There we go. So my invis is about to end. I mass Ring of Frost because I knew the healer would walk in line here. Now I'm still in mass invis because Ring of Frost doesn't break it. Now I'm casting an Arcane Surge. If the DPS was getting kind of close to me mid-cast and I knew he was going to break me out, I probably would have Arcane Surged this and walked backwards a little bit. We can also refer to this Ring of Frost later for kiting. So as soon as they start looking at me now, I should start walking backwards into my Ring of Frost or blast wave them into my Ring of Frost to further peel the DPS. So this is a beautiful opener. I was able to get my damage out. I was able to get the Monk's Trinket. And now that they are both looking at me, I was able to peel them both by using this Ring of Frost with my blast wave. So as you can see here, just to back it up again, I'll let you watch that out in full speed now. So boom, I get my damage out. I'm actually arcane locked. So what I'm doing at this moment is I'm using my other schools of magic. So you can see I'm arcane locked. And now I will opt to just use blast wave because when you get kicked, what you need to be thinking about always, and it needs to have little to no downtime as well. When you get kicked on one school, you need to know what other schools you have. So you need to know what abilities are on different schools. So these are all fire abilities. These are this is nature, and then these are frost. So you see how many abilities you still have available to you even when you get interrupted on Arcane. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll get kicked, and then there'll be a series of dead globals. They'll get kicked, and then they won't press anything. Although you still have so many spells that you could help to move the game forward. Let's say I start casting Ring of Fire right now, and the Demon Hunter has a kick. I could go ahead and get another kick out of the way, or get a Ring of Fire down. So that is just something, a concept to keep in mind. So let's keep watching here, see how I live. So I do my combination of Alter plus Blink Away. However, we do want to keep in mind that our healer isn't on CC, so he could top us. Keep in mind with my blink pattern here is I'm trying to get far away from the priest with this altar because I don't want to get purged on it. So blink or altar blink, but I'm out of LOS of the priest. The demon hunter purges it, so now I immediately notice this. So that's another thing is you want to always notice whenever your altar time gets purged. You never want to be surprised by that by trying to mush your altar keybind and then trying to go back and you're like, wait, what? That is like obviously worst case scenario. If you watched closely here, you would see I tried to meld this hunt, but I didn't have it. So I do give myself damage duck for it here with greater invis. I'm also in dome. So this is something that I want to make sure I stay in my own priest dome because I'm getting hella damage reduction here. So this is something that we'll talk about as well because I just got my first set of precognition. So let's see how I'm doing my my damage here. So I'm in the dome. I have a clear casting missile. So both TPS have their kicks, okay? Because this is where I track my kicks. You can see Monks is off cooldown and Demon Hunter is not showing, which means that he has it available. So I'm never going to commit to this clear casting right here while they're on me. So you'll see what I do here. I consume it for 1 second. I actually kind of consume it for like a little bit longer. And then I cancel it with my mouse wheel down, cancel or stop casting bind. And this gives me a precog. So what I do with this precog is I cast a polymorph. Basically, I was going to sheep the healer with this, but I did realize that he was on DR. So this is kind of a wasted precog. What I should have done with this precog was casted a Ring of Fire to get more damage out. Or I could have shifting powered to, you know, reset my altar and my barriers, since it does look like I am taking some damage here. But basically, I'm just maintaining myself in the dome. I double root them. That's something that's extremely valuable. You have 2 roots, so you want to make sure to always be using double root. You can see here, this puts me ahead in the mobility game for later because he uses Tiger's Lust. So now that's one less mobility option that he has. As you can see, my healer from big debuffs on Ray Frames shows that he is in a incap. So I know immediately that I am about to get, take a lot of damage because he's not healing me actively. So here what I opt to do is kite into the room. Accomplishes 2 things, like we said on the notepad. I'll pull that back up. So basically what this accomplishes is Sorry, kind of choking this thing here. Well, we don't need to pull it up. Basically, what it accomplishes is it uses our positioning to make it harder for the DPS to get to us, because remember, now they have to use mobility to get to us into the room. Our positioning is in relation to our healer's positioning, because it's easy for him to come out of that crowd control and then further heal me since I'm behind him. And we are making the DPS kite away from their healer. So this is something that you guys will pick up on over time, on noticing all these things as they're happening. But basically, this kiting path is perfect because I'm able to kite into the room with blink. I walk around the corner immediately, and immediately as I get around the corner, I ice flow shifting power. And the reason I do this is because I'm off stun DR and I've used my blink for mobility purposes. So I know that the demon hunter wants to fell rush in here and stun me with no blink. So I opt to shifting power to get my blink and my barrier back. You can see I'm sitting on the very edge so that I can peek out and get in line of my healer so he can heal me up. But I see that he gets feared. So I see that the demon hunter is coming in. I shifting powered my blink back and I have my barrier. I tried to Nova him and LOS here, but I did make a small mistake here because I'm waiting out my healer's fear. I should have went back into his line like here. Instead, I get stunned. I have to blink into a wall. Luckily, it doesn't matter too much. And then now I'm still just kiting back out into the open to further line the demon hunter. Let me see how I get this precog here. But yeah, basically you can see I think a lesser mage would have stood out there, not even noticed maybe the CC on his healer, and they probably would have face tanked all that damage and then had been forced into their ice block. So this is just something that you should keep in mind. So I fake cast a sheep because I saw him harpoon. So I was like, I'll try to sheep, and then he goes for the trap. I do fake the sheep cast there because I saw that the monk connected to me at the same time. You never really want to try to commit to a cast when the DPS are on you like that, like I said. So now I have this window of precognition here where I basically can't be interrupted or micro CCs. So he couldn't parry me on this cast. He can't do anything. The only thing he could do is ROP, but I also counterplay that because I have ice flows up. So then I'm just casting big arcane blasts here. You can see how I'm doing my damage. I have my nether precisions. I palm to get touch of the magi to get my 4 arcane charges. And then I'm just going to start pressing arcane blast. And then I also throw in my barrage, which was like an 8-stack harmony, I believe. Hits him pretty hard. I force the monk to port away. And now we can see here, he's forced into a defensive positioning. I noticed that this guy is in a scatter. So what I do is, to get ahead on the mobility trade, I blast wave him away. And then what you can do, a common thing to do with your blast wave when you're trying to cut a melee DPS like this, notice how this is a Z-axis blast wave as well. These are extremely high value because not only are you knocking them extremely far away from everybody, but let's say this wasn't a demon hunter and they can't just double jump back up. You're putting them in a really awkward position. And then you could even ice nova them at the end of that too, to further delay their ability to get back. And then if you did have the global, you could also apply slow to them while they're in this ice nova, because the blast wave slow will end and then they'll be moving at full speed, but you can actually apply slow too. I don't think it's worth the global. Yeah, I tried to sheep him really far away to even further delay, but my pre-scripts me on it. So I'm using Chrono Shift there to get some mobility. I'm just casting missiles. You can see here I orb as well to gain some stacks because I don't have any arcane charges. So I orb here, gives me some stacks. I clear casting missiles to get my 2x nether precision. I don't have full stacks, but it's not really a big deal. So I then use my 2 palm arcane blasts to try to deal as much damage as I can. Put a Ring of Frost down because when they enter Guardian form like this, you can actually Ring of Frost, and that will catch them when they come out. And you can also use this to further kite in there later as well. So this is something that I want to note right here. a lot of the times what I'll do when interrupts are present and I have a Ring of Fire, I will start the interaction with Ring of Fire, because if you get kicked on Ring of Fire, it's not really that big of a deal, because the only thing that locks out is Ring of Fire and like DP and Blast Wave. You still have your most important school, which is Arcane. So I Ring of Fire, I get stunned on it, I blink, I get myself the mobility from Chrono Shift, I do it again, Ring of Fire, and like I said, I didn't care if I get interrupted on that. I was fully expecting to get ranged interrupted by the guy, the Demon Hunter. So now that the monk is connecting to me, I'm Ice Flows and running away from him while he still has this Chrono Shift debuff, and I still have the Chrono Shift movement speed. So this is, using your mobility, using your Ice Flows to range the interrupts while they're snared and while you have movement speed. So I Radiant with full stacks here, missiles for a couple of the ticks, and then I can throw in my Execute Barrage, which hits him really, really hard. And I actually had precog right there at the end as well, somehow. Let me see that. It's because I cancel the missiles. This is why you're canceling your missiles all the time. This is why I reiterate that you have a stop casting keybind somewhere on your mouse, ideally, because now I have precog. So even if this guy wasn't 1% life, I could have casted, a couple hard casted Arcane Blasts into this guy and really took him out. So this was a pretty good game on getting trained by 2 melee DPS. I think I will try to find another one, and then we can go over that as well. Good. Okay, I did want to go over one more game here, because I wanted to get a game into a Death Knight, because I know Death Knights are very oppressive and make it very hard for you to play the game. So, like I said, we're looking for the same thing. I'm looking to get a nice opener with a Mass Invis Ring of Frost. I do kind of get cucked by the map. It didn't let me put it down where I wanted it to right away. So my mass is going to end, and I'm not going to be able to get the nice, clean surge like I wanted to from stealth. So I do actually get Arcane locked here. I immediately take that time. See, no hesitation. Immediately, I got kicked. Immediately, I'm casting a different school. This is something that you guys need to be practicing, is like school weaving, trying to weave in your different schools when you're kicked, making sure you don't have any dead globals or globals where you're not pressing any buttons where you could be. Something that I would recommend is to watch back your own gameplay and notice how many dead globals you actually have in your own gameplay, and then think and look at your abilities and look at your action bars and be like, okay, when I get interrupted here, was I just standing there doing nothing, or could I have been casting a different spell, a different school? So let's let it play out. He step kicks me on fire, but at this point I do realize that my Arcane lockout ends, so I go for the Repoly on the healer. Now I try to get my Arcane Surge off. I do get it. I'm using my just regular damage globals here. I root everybody because I see a nice opportunity, and what this is going to do basically is get more mobility options for later. The priest does MD it, so that's unfortunate. I use my barrier to remove my snare here to try to get around the pillar. He does kind of cuck me on that. So what we're doing here is just, I have my surge up basically. I'm just trying to do as much damage as I can, but I have this DK on me, so I'm not really able to get too much done with my Arcane Surge. So I'm just trying to use my barrages in my, actually I didn't get my surge off. Never mind. That was a surge proc. Okay, yeah, because, sorry, that confused me. So basically, yeah, I'm trying to use my barrier to get around the pillar. The DK does cuck me because I was not close enough to the pillar yet. What I should have done there was get a little bit closer to the pillar and then wait for him to be on global cooldown, then use my barrier to remove my snare and kite the rest of the A-bomb. But I am just staying in line of my healer. I try to get inside of the darkness here. You can see I'm always canceling these clear casting missiles when kicks are up. So I have a charge here. I try to fake kick on surge, didn't get it. I'm canceling my missiles right there to get precognition. That allows me to get my surge off. Since they both overlapped their kicks here, they actually don't have any interrupts available. So I am looking to get some sort of cast off here. That's another thing I do want to kind of reiterate, and this is something I haven't actually mentioned till right now, is identifying the windows where there are actually no interrupts present. Sometimes in your mind you can think that there's never going to be a window and then you can never cast, but if you look here, they don't have any interrupts, and they didn't have any interrupts for the past 15 seconds. So that's just something that you can look for as well, is you need to actively witness and see when those windows are present. So I actually probably could have gotten way more cast off at this point. At here, I still have, so there are kicks present, so I start with a Ring of Fire, like I said, kicks me, and now I'm able to go instantly into my Arcane School here. To get feared on that one. So yes, the poly, I'm using my movement speed here to kite away from the DPS and have the DPS follow me away from their healer. So you can see this is a very common kiting pattern that I take on here, where I'm kiting the DPS away from their healer. I get gripped back. So I actually go for a Ring of Frost off the healer here. The only reason I use this blink charge, by the way, I'll go back here so you can see. My healer actually grants me another blink, so I know I have one for free to use, so I just use it. Normally I would not do this, especially I would have been off stun DR, and then the rogue could have stunned me without a blink, but we're chilling. I'd go for a Ring of Frost off this because I am Thought Stolen, which means he does have my polymorph. I can't actually press poly. DK doesn't have kick. The rogue was too far, I didn't have step. So now I'm able to free cast here. I do my missiles. Orb.
Double van.
I have to be really careful with my casts here because I have both kicks present. So I don't really want to just cast my Arcane School freely. So I'm juking my missiles. You can see now I have a precog window. I get one blast and a Ring of Fire. I actually pre-altered all that damage because I noticed that the rogue had popped Dance. So I alter in a sec as soon as he connects. Go back. I still have precog up, so I'm getting a lot of casts off, a lot of Ring of Fires, a lot of Arcane Blasts, and then I'm using the clear casting missiles to get my Arcane Blast damage modifier here. At this point, I should probably be kiting more towards this pillar to my left to be able to bring the DPS away. Another thing to notice is when you have some sort of damage reduction on you from your teammates, you can see here I have time dilation. So I basically have a 50% wall. So I know that I'm kind of safe, like I'm not going to die here. Still just throwing my barrages on cooldown, trying to micro abuse LOS here, so I can like stay out of line of everybody. And then as you can see, I'm about to die. My healer gets stunned. Probably should have tried to proc a triple DB here. And then randomly my Demon Hunter killed someone. But anyways, I just wanted to show this game because I think it's a great example about not really kiting pattern, but just abusing juking interrupts. Like, precog is a extremely strong ability, and I can't really reiterate enough how important it is to fish for windows like that, for windows of precognition to help you get those important cast off. It's why Arcane Mage is considered one of the hardest specs, because you need to have that in-game knowledge and that experience of juking interrupts. So if this is like a new concept to you, and as a new player, I can understand it's very hard to learn how to juke interrupts. It's only going to come with practice, so keep putting the time in, don't give up. And yeah, let's move on to the next subject here, which actually is going to be getting the most value out of shifting power. So I'll see you guys there. Okay, so another small tip that I wanted to throw into the video was how to get the most value out of shifting power, because shifting power I think is a really crucial ability to be using correctly or trying to get the most value out of. Basically what I see people doing wrong is there are some abilities that you can use that you can really pair with shifting power to make it really strong. For one, if you shifting power without Magi and Palm on cooldown already, it does kind of reduce the value of it a lot. However, if you're playing in like setup based stuff, then it's honestly not that big of a deal. But basically what I'm trying to say is that you want to try to at least get your damage on cooldown. So ideally you really need to have that strong opener where you are popping all your damage rotation abilities like Surge, Magi, Palm, and then after this is over, maybe then you start getting trained. So like I've been able to just sit here and parse. Now the DPS are on me, I alter, I go back here, they connect to me, I root them, go back, and now I barrier. Now I have barrier, alter, Palm, Magi, and Surge all on cooldown. So this is when this would be like a really solid shifting power. The only way the shifting power could have been better was if I had Counterspell and Dragon's Breath on cooldown too. However, you're not always going to be able to fish for the highest value. That is definitely the highest value shifting power you can get, the one I just did there. There aren't going to be, that's not how you're going to use it every time. So for example, if 2 DPS are training me really hard and I'm 50% life, my healer is in CC, and I alter blink around the corner, I want a barrier before I shifting, and then I would shifting here. You never want to like have a barrier on cooldown or off cooldown and then shifting. And the reason why you would only use it for the barrier in that scenario is because of how in danger you are. Your healer's in CC, you're 50% life. It's fine to use it for just defensive purposes if the situation calls for it. And also it would give you the blink back, so if a DPS were to connect to you, you would be able to blink out of the stuns. So that's just a little tip I wanted to give you, is being able to either, the two that I use the most common is I try to use my CS before I shifting. So if I know I'm about to shifting and someone's casting, I'll just use it before I'm about to use it anyways, because by the time I'm done shifting, I'm basically going to have another counterspell. And if you landed the kick, you would have it at the end of the shifting, since the cooldown would have been reduced by 4. So it's really useful to try to use your counterspell and your barrier before you go for the shifting power. Those are the two that I would say are the most important. And if you're really fishing for value, then you're trying to make sure that you have DPS cooldowns and whatnot on cooldown already. So that's just a little shifting power tip. Hope it helps. Now let's move on. Okay, so some compositions that you can run as Arcane Mage, basically in 2s. The only comp that I would recommend, there's 2 comps that I would recommend playing. One is Sub Rogue Arcane Mage and Resto Druid Arcane Mage. So these are the 2 comps that you have to you in the 2v2 bracket. I wouldn't really recommend playing anything other than those. It's not really the best time. You could play Holy Priest Arcane Mage, but it does struggle into any Resto Druid team. And then for 3s, the 3v3 comps that you can play that are really strong in my opinion is Asa Rogue Arcane Mage, and then for the healer you could play Resto Druid, Evoker, or Holy Priest. Those are going to be the 3 best healers for that comp. And then as far as the other comps go, you really do have a lot of flexibility when it comes to Arcane. You fit into a lot of comps. You could play Ellie Mage, you could play Shadow Priest Mage, you could play Feral Mage, you could play Warlock Mage. There are so many different comps that you could play with Arcane Mage right now, because of how versatile the spec is and how mobile you are, which really, it's just very, very versatile class. So you could really play with anything except for DKs, Demon Hunters. I wouldn't play with Hunters. I wouldn't really play, oh yeah, another one I forgot, you could play Windwalker Mage. That's a fun comp. And then all of these comps are gonna honestly be best paired with a Resto Druid because of how strong Resto Druids are right now, and because of how strong Resto Druid Arcane Mage synergy is with being able to rotate Cyclones and Polymorphs. And then the Mass Invis helps the Druid also get the re-stealth for re-stealth drinks. Also, just having a bunch of hots really helps your purge protection when it comes to alter time. So, but like I said, all those comps could also be played with other healers like priests and evokers as well. You don't really play with a Holy Pally too often, although you could. It's more or less, it's got less to do with the Holy Pally than, it's got less to do with Holy Pally and more to do with how strong the other healers are in relation to Holy Pally. And then you never really ever play with a Mistweaver either. And yeah. So anyways, now let's get into the macros. So as you guys can see, my action bars are here. I get a lot of questions as to why do I have 2 of every single ability. Basically, my philosophy behind the action bar is I don't want to see anything that doesn't have a cooldown. So this is actually my Arcane Blast. You'll see if I click it, it's Arcane Blast. If I click this is my missiles. And if I click this, it's my barrage. So I don't need to see these abilities because they effectively have no cooldown. If they were on my action bar, I would not gain anything from seeing them. So I only want stuff that's on my action bar that has a visible cooldown. That is going to be important for me to look down and know. And the reason I have 2 of every button, which this is very personal preference, I don't think everyone needs to do this. I like it because when I glimpse down, I don't look down here too often, but when I do, it's very quick glimpses, and I find that having 2 helps me sort of peripherally see the abilities a lot easier and a lot quicker. So that's why I like having 2 of every ability. A lot of them are macros, so I'll go through my macros here. As you guys can see, I have, let me move this Fire Mage guide thing. So I'll just start going through my macros one by one. So as you guys can see, my Arena 1, 2, 3 macros here. These are for my counterspell. So this is going to be Arena 1 counterspell, Arena 2, and Arena 3. This is going to show the tooltip of counterspell, so it's going to show me the cooldown of it. It's going to dismount me because you actually can't use counterspell while you're on a mount. So if you're running in at the start of a game and someone's casting on you, and you click counterspell, it won't actually demount you. So I have this in all my CS macros. Stop casting, because if I'm casting an ability and I want to counterspell, I want my counterspell to take priority, so it will cancel my cast for me and use it. CQS is a nice quality of life macro because in this game you have something called a spell queue window, where if I press 2 to cast Arcane Blast, I can actually press 2 around like this area in the cast, and it will do another one. It will queue up another spell. Basically, you can modify your spell queue window with this, your lag tolerance. So the idea is usually 100 milliseconds above your ping. So this helps you string your globals back to back to back without any downtime in between them, and this will cancel any queued spell you have. This is just, like I said, it's very small, but it's a nice quality of life so that it always goes off no matter what. Cancel Aura Ice Block in case you're in an ice block and you need to come out and counterspell something really quick. Instead of having to use 2 inputs, one to cancel the block and then one to counterspell, you can just use one simple input. And then I actually have my regular CS, like the ability to target this guy and CS him out in the world, into this macro as well to save a keybind. However, if Arena 1 exists, it will prioritize that. So in Arena, it will always CS Arena 1. Outside of Arena, it will counterspell my target. And then obviously I have Arena 2 and 3. I have the same thing for Supernova, because Supernova is basically another CS, so I do have Supernova 1, 2, 3 as well. Just keep going down the line here. So like I said, this is my barrage. I usually put Cancel Aura Ice Block into all my damaging abilities in case someone's 1% and I need to come out real quick and execute them. I will have that. Just be sure not to accidentally cancel your own ice block. Like I said, I have this macro to look like Arcane Surge because I don't need to see the cooldown of Barrage because there effectively isn't one. So I like to be able to see Arcane Surge. You guys can do this however you want to set up your bars. You could change this to show the cooldown of Touch of the Magi if you wanted. I don't know. You could do whatever you want. You know, all the show tooltip is going to do is just change the cooldown of the ability that it's going to show you. But in reality, it's still Arcane Barrage. So that's how I'm using that. Same thing for Arcane Blast. Nothing too much there. And then for this is my Arcane Intellect bind. This hides the role icon in the party frames because I don't really like it. It's personal preference. This is my nameplates. So this is how I get the small nameplates. So as you guys can tell in my videos, like my friendly nameplates when they're in my party. Like if I can just maybe invite this guy, maybe he'll join real quick. But basically when I buff, that will run the script, so you don't have to keep running the script every single time. It doesn't look like he wants to accept my group real quick, but join. So whenever I press my buff, let me reload my nameplates. It's not doing it. Maybe I don't have it on this. Okay, well basically it should work. I don't think I have this macro. I'll put it here. Okay, it's not working. But you get the point. It should work in PvP, like in an arena match. It's not working out here for some reason though. But now we'll keep going. So this is my badge trinket. I use it to always show the tooltip and to always use this the top one, this one is 13, the bottom one is 14. So that whenever you change trinkets, it'll automatically put that new one on the keybind. So you can see, boom. I'm in combat because this thing is keeping me in combat. Okay. So now when I do this here, boom, changes the trinket. Let's keep going down the line here. My missiles, so this is kind of important. I actually have cancel aura concentration in here. I'll try to show you guys why. Arcane Blast has a chance to grant concentration, which makes your next clear casting not be consumed. So I will try to show you guys what this means. Basically, you don't want this buff ever, because whenever you consume that clear casting with concentration, it will actually not give you the nether precision buff, and it will also not let you do it while moving. So some of you guys may have already ran into this by accident, and yes, this is why. I'm trying to wait for the concentration proc here, if I can get it. Should be, so there it is. Your next clear casting will not be consumed. If I use it without a macro, you will see that I actually could do that one while moving, but I don't have the nether precision buff, and that's what you don't want to get screwed over by that, because then you're gonna have to use another global to get the buff to consume another one. So what you want to do is you want to cancel aura that every time into your missiles macro. So let's keep going down the line here. This is my cancel aura ice block and cancel slow fall, and this is also how I juke. This is the stop casting that I put on my mouse wheel down. This is how I juke interrupts. This is how I pump fake my missiles. This is how I get the 3 missiles on the radiant. Yeah, I think that macro is really important. Blink. I have this macro that shows the cooldown of blink, even when you're playing shimmer, because I like the blink icon better than the shimmer icon. Just a cosmetic thing. You guys don't need it that way, but yeah. Actually, it's not working. I think you have to go into here and you have to turn blink on. You have to find the blink icon. I'll fix that later though. This is your cancel alter. This is the one, like I said, if you're 30% life and then you alter time and you get your healer heals you back to full HP, you don't want to alter back, so you would use this macro to effectively just cancel it. Really important macro there. This is cancel BM and then alter back. I have a completely separate video talking about this. Basically, whenever you do the BM alter trick, you guys can check out that video if you want to learn about that. This will cancel the BM first and then alter back to effectively give you the HP back. This is my DB macro. I'm taking a lot of the same stuff from my counterspell macro, the stop casting, the cancel cute spell, and then this is a little toy that you get from the Dark Moon Fair. Gives you that nice green. Basically, the idea behind putting any of these in a macro is you want the ability to go off no matter what when you press it. So this is my focus polymorph macro. It's basically just going to polymorph your focus target. Don't use any of these. I have a focus Ice Nova macro as well. You don't need this. I like it. I have a focus Magi macro as well. And basically the thought process behind this is that let's say you're playing Rogue Mage in 2v2. And these two cleave dummies right here are next to each other, and one of them is the healer. We'll say this one on the right, the focus one, is the healer, and this is the DPS. If I were to Magi the kill target here, in 10 seconds, if he is still on the healer, it will break whatever crowd control we have. Let's say we do a blind into a sap, and I have already Magi'd the kill target. The Magi will explode and will just it will break the CC on the healer. So on goes like that, what I'll do is I'll actually use focus Magi, and I will Magi the healer, and then start bursting this guy. The reason I do that is because since you're not doing any damage into the Magi, it basically just won't explode. It does no damage. So it won't break any crowd control, and you're still using the Magi to get the 4 instant off global arcane charges. So that's what we're doing there. Focus slow, because I really like to have focus of all of my focus slow and my Ice Nova and my sheep. I also use focus spell steal, which I'll show you later. This is my mouse over focus. I like to have this for like battlegrounds, world PvP. Same thing there. The Healthstone macro. I don't really use this, to be honest. If I am playing with a warlock, that's what I have this bind here for. Control wheel up. So I mean, you can use this if you want. The reason I don't is because I have my refreshment all the way up here, and I don't really like looking up here, or I never look up here, so I'll never notice it. But you can do that. These macros are all like experimental. This is my ice block macro. This will stop casting, and it will do this basically, so it will just go off no matter what when you press it. Make sure to not double press your block, because keep in mind, if you spam block, it will pull you out. It's got a long delay though. It won't pull you out unless you're spamming it for like 2 seconds after it. So definitely don't do that. Mirror images with big red ray gun. I do this because the big red ray gun actually does affect your mirror images, so it makes them look big and red. I don't know. It's just cool. Let's see here. So I put my badge into my palm and my magi just in case it doesn't go off. I like to have it in both of these abilities. It should always go off in your magi, but just like I said, as an insurance policy, you can put it into your palm as well. The remove curse macro, we've talked about this already. If you're targeting someone, an enemy, and I press it, it will be on me. If I'm targeting a teammate, it will be on them. And then if I have a mouse over, it will be on them as well. Okay, let's see here. Don't really use the cursor macro. Don't really use cancel shields anymore. That's kind of all my macros. Obviously I have the focus spell steal. And yeah, those are all my macros for Arcane. I don't really use any other macros other than that. So now let's move on to add-ons. So real quickly, I did just want to talk about my add-ons because add-ons and UI is a very important part of this game. So quickly, we can just go over my add-on list here. I use advanced interface options to do a couple different things. Basically, this has a lot of really nice quality of life things that you can do through the CVAR browser. For example, you can turn the, I think it's the, I'm not sure the thing actually, I think it's camera distance max zoom factor. So you can turn your camera distance up, which is how I'm able to zoom out so much as a mage. I really like playing at the max zoom distance because it gives me the most vision on the map. I can see positioning a lot clearer, and I think it's a little bit easier to use your AoE abilities such as Ring of Frost and Ring of Fire. The egg scripts, these are just scripts that I want to run. You guys can go to a website called addon.bool, and that is spelled like this, addon.b. Here, I'll do it in chat over here. Addon.bool. And basically what that's going to do is that will let you create an add-on of your own, basically. Or actually, it's addon.bool.no. So yeah, and then you can paste scripts in there. It'll make it an add-on for you, and then you put that in your interface folder, and then it will run those scripts every time you open up the game. So I just have my daily scripts in there that I use all the time. Bartender to get my action bars here. As you can see, I have if you count my buttons here, I actually have 14 across, and I actually am able to put the extra 2 over here for my Rune of Power and my badge trinket, which I like to see over here. So that's how I'm getting that. Bartender is also how I get the queue status to appear on my map. Boom. And I like that a lot more. Let's go through the add-on list some more. Big debuffs is a very, very useful awareness add-on. If you guys don't have that, I definitely recommend that you get it. It's going to show the big debuffs on the right side of the target, and also if you're in a party, it will show big debuffs of whatever crowd control your healer is in on the raid frames. If you guys do want my export for this, all my exports can be found in the Discord. I'm not going to go over it in here, but you guys can directly download my exports from my Discord, so join that. I use classic frames. What that's going to do is give me my old UI back, basically, because I don't really like the new UI. Add-ons, classic numbers is going to give you my damage numbers here. So whenever you hit non-crits, it'll look like that. And then you hit the big crits. See if I can get one. It does the big number, the clean number. And it's not going to show you little numbers. So I kind of can't hit small enough. Actually, it looks like I can. You can see it's not showing me the little piss numbers that missiles are hitting for. It'll only show the numbers above 10k. And the way you do this is you go into classic numbers and you turn the small hit filter up to 10k. So that'll only show you the meaningful numbers and not all the little annoying ones. Classic UI, I only use this to get the old minimap. So I do that. Details, obviously we all know what details is. Details is how you look at your damage breakdown. It's how you can look at your death log. This is something that you can do whenever you die. You go to your death log, see how you died, see what killed you. You can go to healing done, you can go to damage done, basically all these things. You can go to CC breaks if something broke randomly and you want to see what broke it. This is a really good tool to learn basically, what's doing damage, what's healing, what's breaking CC, all that kind of stuff. Diminish, this is an add-on that shows you the DRs of yourself. So whenever you get put on DR, it will show you what DRs you're on. This is really good for knowing if you can use blink. For example, like if it shows that I'm on stun DR, then I know I can use my blink willy-nilly because I'm on stun DR, so I can't be punished for it anyways. Let's go back to add-ons. Health bar color basically makes it to where you target or focus someone. The health bar, instead of being green, will be the color of the class. I personally really like this. Leatrix, this is how I get this dragon around my nameplate here. Again, I just really like it. Move it. So this is kind of an important one. For example, I moved my arcane charges down here through a weak aura that I'll show you later. But what you have to do as well is use move it to hide the original one. So you don't have two of them. So you type in basically what you want to do is you can use toggle frame stack here, and you can hover over any part of the map or any part of the game, and it will tell you what that thing is called. So you see the ones that are lit up here. Now I know that this frame is called player frame. And then if I had arcane charges here, and I hovered over them, it would say mage arcane charges frame. So I would type in mage arcane charges frame, hit OK, and then I would add the frame, and then this would pop up, and then you would hit hide frame so that you can hide the default one. You can do this for any part of the thing. For example, when I put a rune of power down, I've moved my totems. Here, let me actually spec into rune of power. Because, for example, when I have someone on focus, normally when you put a rune of power down, it would give you a nice thing right here. This would normally be here, but I changed it to be over here because I didn't want it to overlap with this frame. So you can use move it to move all sorts of stuff that edit mode can't. I think people use move anything as well, but at the time the expansion was new and move anything was not updated yet. So Omnibar is a really, really good add-on. This is how you track kicks. And I've actually started using this to track DPS cooldowns as well. I've actually moved away from Gladius EX because what I really like about Omnibar is that you can modify abilities. And honestly, Gladius EX is not updated yet, so I really wanted to be able to track the cooldown of Deathmark and stuff. I'm just using this temporarily for now. If it turns out that I really do like using Omnibar to track arena cooldowns like this, let me do this. Boom. 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 And then test. So basically you can see here I'm using it to track, if I were to pull up my S arena, that's how I track enemy cooldowns. They're not exactly lined up, but you get the point. Normally I use Gladius EX for that. I have a tutorial for that in my Discord. Like I said, I might switch to Omnibar. Not sure yet, but Omnibar is really good for tracking interrupts. This is what I would use it for normally. As you can see here, I have a group called Kicks. By the way, this export is also available in my Discord. So if you guys want to get my profile, you can go to my Discord and import the profile. So yeah, that'll show you kicks for every class and some other important stuff like grounding, death, stuff like that. So very important. Omni CC, this shows the cooldown count and it makes it different colors. So I personally like that. Omni CD, this is whenever you have a party and you test. It's weird, it's not exactly working, but basically whenever you have the raid frames here, it will have their cooldowns out to the left. I do have my profile for this as well, so you would go to the Discord, the UI and add-on section, and then you would import my profile for this as well. So very useful add-on to know your teammates' cooldowns. Save queue, whenever you get a queue, it'll show you how long until you can accept it. Pretty good. S Arena, I'm using S Arena updated. So that is also available in my Discord if you want to get the S Arena. This is what it looks like. It's my personal style. This is how I like it to look. It's a very useful arena add-on. It'll show you DRs, it'll show you cast bars, it'll show you auras. So like if I polymorph the target, it'll show a polymorph here. It'll show trinkets, racials, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Spec specific keybinds. So I really like this add-on because I play every single spec. So if you guys look at my keybinds here, you'll notice that whenever I switch to fire, my keybinds will look a little different because this add-on saves your keybinds per spec, and I like playing all 3 specs. So that's how I, got my Christmas mug on. That's how I am able to play all 3 specs and have my keybinds be different for all 3 of them. So that's that. Spell notifications. This is going to show me when I spell steal a target. Right here, normally where it says like you're out of range, like it'll give you that little error text. Like here, it'll show you in addition to like out of range, for example, it'll say stole life bloom or stole power infusion. It's very useful to see what you stole, and it'll also tell you what school you interrupted if you use counterspell, so you know for sure if you actually landed the CS or not. So yeah, that's a really good one. Tell me when. So Tell Me When is the add-on that I use to show a lot of really basic auras. For example, my Presence of Mind, my Nether Precision, my Arcane Harmony, Clear Castings, my Arcane Surge, my badge or insignia or emblem, my Mass Invis. If I have the Hunter Silence on me, if I have Mind Games on me, if I have Kiefers on me, which is the Monk's ability, if I get a Hyperthermia proc, my Temporal Shield if I play it, if someone intervenes me, if a Warlock tongues me, if I have precog, if I steal nullifyings, it'll show me how many stacks I have, my ice flows, and then if I'm thought stolen. And then another Tell Me When I use over here is because S Arena doesn't have a built-in dispel tracker, and as a mage you really need to know when the enemy healer has dispel or not, because that's how you know if you can poly, nova, slow, and like weave through the all your DRs. So I have that built into my Tell Me When as well. You can get my export in my Discord, like I said. Let's keep going. Trophy GCD, I have this on my unit frames here to show global cooldowns. So if I target someone, it will show me what global cooldown they're using. I like this a lot, and it does it for the focus as well. I will show you guys my settings for Trophy GCD because it doesn't let you export profiles. So if you guys did want to set up this add-on for yourself, I can show you it here, but it looks like my WoW's crashed. So let me just restart my game real quick. Okay, sorry about that. Not sure why my game crashed, but anyways, here's my settings for Trophy GCD if you guys were interested in that. So now we will continue to go down the list. Weak Auras is my next one. Weak Auras is obviously a very crazy add-on. I have a couple weak auras here, and all of these are available in my Discord as well. So this is my buff counter. This is going to show me how many buffs I have. This is my Arcane Charge weak aura. Whenever you do install this one, it will appear bugged. You have to just /reload one time, and then it will work. And you only have to do it that one time. So as soon as you install it, reload, and then it'll work for life. The Mage Barriers, this shows me how much absorb my barrier has, because you don't want to, let's say you had another one, you wouldn't want a barrier on top of that because you still have 61k absorb. So you would want to wait for that absorb to go away, or you'd want to wait for that barrier to get broken, and then you would want to rebarrier. PvP queue tells you how long you're in the queue. GCD tracker, this one will show you the enemy's global cooldown, global for global, on the left side of their nameplate. Again, I have this available in my Discord. The alter time weak aura will show you what percentage you altered at. It'll be green if when you alter back it's a health increase, and it'll be red if it's a health decrease, so you know to cancel it. The cooldowns, in my opinion, this is I don't use these, but actually I do have some of them enabled. Like it's useful to know Deathmark or Siphoned, Feral Frenzy, all these abilities, especially this one, which I made myself, Overgrowth, because whenever you play against the rest of Druid as an Arcane Mage, and you're playing Kleptomania, this is the main thing you want to look out for to Klepto. So I don't have these in my Discord because I don't really use them myself, so it'd be kind of weird to have them for you guys. But if you download Mez has a weak aura package that you could use to get all these, and then if you want, you can just go through and get rid of all the ones you don't want. So yeah, maybe I will include a weak aura to mine in the description in case you do just want the like really small, like hardly anything, but like you might need to know this when it happens. And then those are all my weak auras. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. That's going to be the Arcane Mage guide. I'm pretty sure, because I just recorded this all in one day, I'm pretty sure this came out to be a really long video. So if the length is too long, I really do apologize. I'll try to trim it down as much as I can in the editing. But if you guys are, have any more questions, or if you feel like there's something I didn't really cover, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to address it in the comments. Because I really want to help you guys learn how to play the game and learn how to play Mage. Like I said, if I missed anything, please ask detailed questions in the comments, and I'll try to get back to those as best as I can. That's all I really have. I hope you guys enjoyed the content here, and as you guys can see, I am doing more guides. I do have sub goals every time a new one is complete. So this Arcane Mage was a sub guide, a sub goal over on my Twitch stream, AEGHISTV on Twitch. If you guys would like something like this for Fire or Frost, I am currently working towards those goals now. So hope you guys enjoy the video. Good luck out there, and peace.